What would Game of Thrones be like as an animated comic book? Well, today we're launching a brand new video series where we explore the entire A Song of Ice and Fire, starting with the first 10 chapters of A Game of Thrones, but as an animated comic book experience, combining some of the best artwork from talented artists, Game of Thrones comic panels, and vertical footage from the TV series. At the end of each chapter, we'll also break down the key differences between the books and the show, so you can see exactly how the story changed on screen. We hope you enjoy this journey through Westeros. If you do, don't forget to subscribe. And now, let's begin. Prologue. We should start back, Garrett urged as the woods began to grow dark around them. The wildlings are dead. Do the dead frighten you? So Waymar Royce asked with a hint of a smile. Dead is dead, Garrett said. We have no business with the dead. Are they dead? Royce asked softly. What proof have we? Will saw them, Garrett said. If he says they are dead, that's proof enough for me. My mother told me that dead men sing no songs, Will chimed in. My wet nurse said the same thing, Will, Royce replied. Never believe anything you hear at a woman's tit. There are things to be learned even from the dead. We have a long ride before us, Garrett pointed out. 8 days, maybe 9, and night is falling. So Waymar Royce glanced at the sky with disinterest. It does that every day, about this time. Are you unmanned by the dark, Garrett? Garrett had spent 40 years in the Night's Watch, man and boy, and he was not accustomed to being made light of. Yet it was more than that, a nervous tension that came perilously close to fear. Will shared his unease. He had been 4 years on the wall. He was a veteran of 100 rangings by now. But something was different tonight. There was an edge to this darkness that made his hairs rise. So Waymar Royce was the youngest son of an ancient house with too many heirs. He was a handsome youth of 18 and a sworn brother of the Night's Watch for less than half a year. It is hard to take orders from a man you laughed at in your cups, Will reflected as he sat shivering atop his garron. Garrett must have felt the same. Mormont said we should track them, and we did, Garrett said. They're dead. They shan't trouble us no more. There's hard riding before us. I don't like this weather. If it snows, we could be a fortnight getting back, and snow's the best we can hope for. Ever seen an ice storm, my lord? The lordling seemed not to hear him. Tell me again what you saw, Will. All the details. Leave nothing out, Royce said. The camp is 2 miles farther on, over that ridge, hard beside a stream, Will said. I got close as I dared. There's 8 of them, men and women both. No children I could see. They put up a lean-to against the rock. The snow's pretty well covered it now, but I could still make it out. No fire burning, but the fire pit was still plain as day. No one moving. I watched a long time. No living man ever lay so still. Did you see any blood? Well, no, Will admitted. Did you see any weapons? Some swords, a few bows. One man had an axe, heavy-looking, double-bladed, a cruel piece of iron. It was on the ground beside him, right by his hand. Did you make note of the position of the bodies? Will shrugged. A couple are sitting up against the rock, most of them on the ground, fallen-like. Or sleeping? Royce suggested. Fallen, Will insisted. There's one woman up an ironwood, half hid in the branches, a far eyes. He smiled thinly. I took care she never saw me. When I got close, I saw that she wasn't moving neither. Despite himself, he shivered. You have a chill? Royce asked. Some, Will muttered. The wind, my lord. The young knight turned back to his grizzled man-at-arms. What do you think might have killed these men, Jared? Sir Waymar asked casually. It was the cold, Garrett said, with iron certainty. I saw men freeze last winter, and the one before, when I was half a boy. Everyone talks about snows 40 foot deep, and how the ice wind comes howling out of the north. But the real enemy is the cold. It steals up on you, quieter than will. And at first you shiver, and your teeth chatter, and you stamp your feet and dream of mulled wine and nice hot fires. It burns, it does. Nothing burns like the cold, but only for a while. Then it gets inside you and starts to fill you up. And after a while, you don't have the strength to fight it. It's easier just to sit down or go to sleep. They say you don't feel any pain toward the end. First, you go weak and drowsy, and everything starts to fade. And then it's like sinking into a sea of warm milk. Peaceful-like. Such elegance, Jared, Sir Waymar observed. I never suspected you had it in you. I've had the cold in me too, lordling, Jared added. 2 ears, 3 toes, and the little finger of my left hand. I got off light. We found my brother frozen at his watch, with a smile on his face. So Waymar shrugged. You ought to dress more warmly, Jared. If Jared said it was the cold, Will began. Have you drawn any watches this past week, Will? Yes, my lord. There was never a week when he did not draw a dozen bloody watches. What was the man driving at? And how did you find the wool? Weeping, Will said, frowning. He saw it clear enough now that the lordling had pointed it out. They couldn't have froze, not if the wool was weeping. It wasn't cold enough. Royce nodded. Bright lad, we've had a few light frosts this past week, and a quick flurry of snow now and then, but surely no cold fierce enough to kill 8 grown men. Men clad in fur and leather, let me remind you, with shelter near at hand and the means of making fire. Will, lead us there. I would see these dead men for myself. The order had been given, and honor bound them to obey. We can make a better pace than this, surely, Royce said when the moon was half risen. Royce said when the moon was full risen. Not with this horse, Will said. Perhaps my lord would care to take the lead? So Waymar Royce did not deign to reply. Somewhere off in the wood, a wolf howled. Will pulled his garron over beneath an ancient gnarled ironwood and dismounted. Why are you stopping? So Waymar asked. Best go the rest of the way on foot, my lord. It's just over that ridge. A cold wind whispered through the trees. There's something wrong here, Jared muttered. The young knight gave him a disdainful smile. Is there? Can't you feel it? Jared asked. Listen to the darkness. Will could feel it. 4 years in the Night's Watch, and he had never been so afraid. What was it? Wind, trees rustling, a wolf. Which sound is it that unmans you so, Jared? When Jared did not answer, Royce slid gracefully from his saddle. He tied the destrier securely to a low-hanging limb, well away from the other horses, and drew his longsword from its sheath. The trees press close here, Will warned. That sword will tangle you up, my lord. Better a knife. If I need instruction, I will ask for it, the young lord said. Jared, stay here. Guard the horses. Jared dismounted. We need a fire. I'll see to it. How big of a fool are you, old man? If these are enemies in the wood, a fire is the last thing we want. There's some enemies a fire will keep away, Jared said. Bears and direwolves and other things. So Waymar's mouth became a hard line. No fire. Jared looked down. No fire, he muttered, low under his breath. Royce turned away. Lead on, he said to Will. Will eventually reached and looked down on the empty clearing. His heart stopped in his chest. For a moment, he dared not breathe. They were gone. All the bodies were gone. Get down, Will whispered urgently. Something's wrong. Royce did not move. He looked down at the empty clearing and laughed. Your dead men seem to have moved camp, Will. Will's voice abandoned him. He groped for words that did not come. It was not possible. On your feet, Will, so Waymar commanded. There's no one here. I won't have you hiding under a bush. Reluctantly, Will obeyed. So Waymar looked down over him with open disapproval. I am not going back to Castle Black, a failure on my first ranging. We will find these men. He glanced around. Up the tree. Be quick about it. Look for a fire. Will turned away, wordless. There was no use to argue. Fear filled his gut like a meal he could not digest. He whispered a prayer to the nameless gods of the wood. Down below, the lordling called out suddenly, "Who goes there?" Will heard uncertainty in the challenge. The woods gave answer, the rustle of leaves, the icy rush of the stream, a distant hoot of a snow owl. The others made no sound. Will saw movement from the corner of his eye, pale shapes gliding through the wood. He turned his head, glimpsed a white shadow in the darkness. Then it was gone. "Will, where are you?" Sir Waymar called up. "Can you see anything?" He was turning in a slow circle, suddenly wary, his sword in hand. He must have felt them, as Will felt them. There was nothing to see. "Answer me, why is it so cold?" A shadow emerged from the dark of the wood. It stood in front of Royce. Tall it was, and gaunt and hard as old bones, with flesh pale as milk. Its armor seemed to change color as it moved. Here it was white as a new fallen snow. There, black as shadow. Everywhere dappled with the deep grey-green of the trees. Will heard the breath go out of Sir Waymar Royce in a long hiss. "Come no farther," the lordling hissed. His voice cracked like a boy's. He threw the long sable cloak back over his shoulders to free his arms for battle, and took his sword in both hands. The wind had stopped. It was very cold. The other slid forward on silent feet. In its hand was a longsword, like none that Will had ever seen. No human metal had gone into the forging of that blade. It was alive with moonlight, translucent. A shard of crystal so thin that it seemed almost to vanish when seen edge on. So Waymar met him bravely. "Dance with me then." He lifted his sword high over his head, defiant. His hands trembled over the weight of it, or perhaps from the cold. Yet in that moment, Will thought, he was a boy no longer, but a man of the Night's Watch. The other halted. Will saw its eyes. Blue, deeper and bluer than any human eyes. A blue that burned like ice. They emerged silently from the shadows, twins to the first. 3 of them. 4. 5. So Waymar may have felt the cold that came with them, but he never saw them, never heard them. Will had to call out. It was his duty, and his death if he did. He shivered and hugged the tree and kept the silence. The pale sword came shivering through the air. So Waymar met it with steel. When the blades met, there was no ring of metal on metal, only a high, thin sound at the edge of hearing, like an animal screaming in pain. Royce checked a second blow, and a third, then fell back a step. Another flurry of blows, and he fell back again. To right, to left, all around him, the watchers stood patient, faceless, silent. Yet they made no move to interfere. Again and again the swords met, until Will wanted to cover his ears against the strange anguish keening of their clash. So Waymar was panting from the effort now, his breath steaming in the moonlight. His blade was white with frost. The others danced with pale blue light. Then Royce's parry came a beat too late. The pale sword bit through the ringmail beneath his arm. The young lord cried out in pain. The other said something in a language that Will did not know. His voice was like the cracking of ice on a winter lake, and the words were mocking. So Waymar Royce found his fury. "For Robert!" he shouted, and he came up snarling, lifting the frost-covered longsword with both hands and swinging it around in a flat sidearm slash with all his weight behind it. The other's parry was almost lazy. When the blades touched, the steel shattered. A scream echoed through the forest night, and the longsword shivered into 100 brittle pieces, the shards scattering like a rain of needles. Royce went to his knees, shrieking, and covered his eyes. Blood welled between his fingers. The watchers moved forward together, as if some signal had been given. Sword rose and fell. all in a deathly silence. It was cold butchery. The pale blade sliced through ringmail as if it were silk. Will closed his eyes. Far beneath him he heard their voices and laughter sharp as icicles. When he found the courage to look again, a long time had passed, and the ridge below was empty. He stayed in the tree, scarce daring to breathe, while the moon crept slowly across the black sky. Finally, his muscles cramping and his fingers numb with cold, he climbed down. Royce's body lay face down in the snow, one arm outflung. Lying dead like that, you saw how young he was, a boy. He found what was left of the sword a few feet away. The end splintered and twisted like a tree struck by lightning. Will knelt, looked around warily, and snatched it up. The broken sword would be his proof. Jared would know what to make of it, and if not him, then surely the old Bear Mormont, or Maester Aemon. Would Jared still be waiting with the horses? He had to hurry. Will rose, so Waymar Royce stood over him. His fine clothes were a tatter, his face a ruin. A shard from his sword transfixed the blind white pupil of his left eye. The right eye was open, the pupil burnt blue. It saw. The broken sword fell from nerveless fingers. Will closed his eyes to pray. Long, elegant hands brushed his cheek, then tightened around his throat. They were gloved in the finest moleskin and sticky with blood, yet the touch was icy cold. The prologue ends there, and what's most tragic about it is that Will was planning to return back to the Night's Watch with the evidence to prove that the others have returned, only to be strangled to death before he could do so, and with Robert arriving at Winterfell, the timing couldn't have been better for Westeros. But instead, internal squabbles like the War of the Five Kings exhaust the Seven Kingdoms' resources, while the real threat lingers in the north waiting for winter to come. Now, there's a lot of theory surrounding the wildlings, and there is what the show presented us with, which is that the others were created by the children of the forest to take revenge on the first men of Westeros after their invasion of the continent 8,000 years ago. However, until this is confirmed in the books, we'll move on. Next, it is suspected by theorists that the others' migration south is out of necessity for the Night's Watch forgetting about their ancient practice of hand-delivering newborn babies to the others in an arrangement that was made 8,000 years ago. It's theorized that the others cannot or struggle to procreate, so they constantly require new genetic makeup, otherwise they become too incestuous and deformed. Which means that Craster giving his incest-born males to the others in A Clash of Kings is only exasperating their inbred depression, which is a real thing. So it could be that the others are justified in their invasion since the Night's Watch have failed to keep their side of the promise made 8,000 years ago after the Long Night. Anyway, we should hopefully get a better look at the others when The Winds of Winter hopefully gets released. Here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. In the book, the White Walkers' attack happens after several days of riding north of the Wall, but in the TV series, it happens in a forest close to the Wall on the same day the Rangers leave Castle Black. The White Walkers are mostly called others in the books, especially by the people of the Seven Kingdoms. It is the wildlings and Old Nan who refer to them as White Walkers. In the TV series, Will discovers the wildlings massacred and their bodies brutalized. In the book, he says they appear to be sleeping and likely froze to death. There is no mentioning in the book that the wildlings' corpses have been arranged in any pattern. The White Walkers are of different appearance in the TV series. In the book, they have white skin and reflective light armor. In the TV series, they have frozen grey skin and brutal faces similar to a skull, and the armor they wear in later seasons is black and non-reflective. The white girl who frightens Will in the series is never mentioned in the book. In the book, Waymar Royce is transformed into a white. In the TV series, Garrett is killed by the White Walkers and Will escapes. In the books, Will is strangled by the White of Waymar Royce and Garrett escapes, to be executed in Bran I. And that's all we have for the prologue. Bran I. The morning had dawned clear and cold, with a crispness that hinted at the end of summer. They set forth at daybreak to see a man beheaded, 20 in all, and Bran rode among them, nervous with excitement. This was the first time he had been deemed old enough to go with his lord father and his brothers to see the king's justice done. It was the 9th year of summer and the 7th of Bran's life. Robb thought he was a wildling, his sword sworn to Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall. It made Bran's skin prickle to think of it. He remembered the hearth tales old Nan told them. The wildlings were cruel men, she said, slavers and slayers and thieves. They consorted with giants and ghouls, stole girl children in the dead of night, and drank blood from polished horns. And their women lay with the others in the long night to sire terrible, half-human children. But the man they found, bound hand and foot to the holdfast wall awaiting the king's justice, was old and scrawny, not much taller than Robb. He had lost both ears and a finger to frostbite, and he dressed all in black, the same as a brother of the Night's Watch, except that his furs were ragged and greasy. Robb and Jon sat tall and still on their horses, with Bran between them on his pony, trying to seem older than 7, trying to pretend he'd seen all of this before. Over their heads flapped the banner of the Starks of Winterfell, a grey direwolf racing across an ice-white field. Bran's father sat solemnly on his horse, long brown hair stirring in the wind. His closely trimmed beard was shot with white, making him look older than his 35 years. He had a grim cast to his grey eyes this day, and he seemed not at all the man who would sit before the fire in the evening and talk softly of the age of heroes and the children of the forest. He had taken off father's face, Bran thought, and donned the face of Lord Stark of Winterfell. Finally, his lord father gave a command, and 2 of his guardsmen dragged the ragged man to the ironwood stump in the center of the square. They forced his head down onto the hard black wood. Lord Eddard Stark dismounted, and his ward, Theon Greyjoy, brought forth the sword. Ice, that sword was called. It was as wide across as a man's hand, and taller even than Robb. The blade was Valyrian steel, spell-forged and dark as smoke. Nothing held an edge like Valyrian steel. His father peeled off his gloves and handed them to Jory Castle, the captain of his household guard. He took hold of Ice with both hands and said, "In the name of Robert of House Baratheon, the first of his name, King of the Andals and the Rhoynar and the First Men, Lord of the 7 Kingdoms and Protector of the Realm, by the word of Eddard of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, I do sentence you to die." He lifted the greatsword high above his head. Bran's bastard brother, Jon Snow, moved closer. "Keep the pony well in hand," he whispered, "and don't look away. Father will know if you do." Bran kept his pony well in hand and did not look away. His father took off the man's head with a single sure stroke. Blood sprayed out across the snow, as red as summer wine. One of the horses reared and had to be restrained to keep from bolting. Bran could not take his eyes off the blood. The head bounced off a thick root and rolled. It came up near Greyjoy's feet. Theon was a lean, dark youth of 19 who found everything amusing. He laughed, put his boot on the head, and kicked it away. "Arse," Jon muttered, low enough so Greyjoy did not hear. He put a hand on Bran's shoulder, and Bran looked over at his bastard brother. "You did well," Jon told him solemnly. Jon was 14, an old hand at justice. "The deserter died bravely," Robb said. He was big and broad and growing every day, with his mother's colouring, the fair skin, red-brown hair and blue eyes of the Tullys of Riverrun. He had courage at the least. "No," Jon said quietly. It was not courage. This one was dead of fear. You could see it in his eyes, Star. Jon's eyes were a grey so dark they seemed almost black, but there was little they did not see. He was of an age with Robb, but they did not look alike. Jon was slender where Robb was muscular, dark where Robb was fair, graceful and quick where his half-brother was strong and fast. Robb was not impressed. The others take his eyes, he swore. He died well. Race you to the bridge? Done, Jon said, kicking his horse forward. Robb cursed and followed. Bran did not try to follow. His pony could not keep up. He had seen the ragged man's eyes, and he was thinking of them now. So deep in thought was he that he never heard the rest of the party until his father moved up to ride beside him. "Are you well, Bran?" he asked, not unkindly. "Yes, father," Bran told him. "Robb says the man died bravely, but Jon says he was afraid." "What do you think?" his father asked. Bran thought about it. "Can a man still be brave if he's afraid?" "That is the only time a man can be brave," his father told him. "Do you understand why I did it?" "He was a wildling," Bran said. "They carry off women and sell them to the others." His lord father smiled. "Old man has been telling you stories again. In truth, the man was an oath-breaker, a deserter from the Night's Watch. No man is more dangerous. The deserter knows his life is forfeit if he is taken, so he will not flinch from any crime, no matter how vile. But you mistake me. The question was not why the man had to die, but why I must do it." Bran had no answer for that. "King Robert has a headsman," he said, uncertainly. "He does," his father admitted, "as did the Targaryen kings before him. Yet our way is the older way. The blood of the first men still flows in the veins of the Starks, and we hold to the beliefs that the man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. If you would take a man's life, you owe it to him to look into his eyes and hear his final words. One day, Bran, you will be Robb's bannerman, holding a keep of your own for your brother and your king, and justice will fall to you. When that day comes, you must take no pleasure in the task, but neither must you look away. A ruler who hides behind paid executioners soon forgets what death is." That was when Jon reappeared on the crest of the hill before them. He waved and shouted down at them, "Father, Bran, come quickly, see what Robb has found." Then he was gone again. Jory rode up beside them. "Trouble, my lord?" "Beyond a doubt," his lord father said. "Come, let us see what mischief my sons have rooted out now." They found Robb on the riverbank north of the bridge, with Jon still mounted beside him. Robb was cradling something in his arm, while the boys talked in hushed, excited voices. Jory Castle and Theon Greyjoy were the first to reach the boys. Greyjoy was laughing and joking as he rode. Bran heard the breath go out of him. "Gods!" he exclaimed, struggling to keep control of his horse as he reached for his sword. Jory's sword was already out. "Robb, get away from it!" he called as his horse reared under him. Robb grinned and looked up from the bundle in his arms. "She can't hurt you," he said. "She's dead, Jory." "What in the seven hells is it?" Greyjoy was saying. "A wolf," Robb told him. "A freak," Greyjoy said. "Look at the size of it." Bran's heart was thumping in his chest. Half buried in the blood-stained snow, a huge dark shape slummed in death. Ice had formed in its shaggy grey fur, and the faint smell of corruption clung to it like a woman's perfume. Bran glimpsed blind eyes crawling with maggots, a wide mouth full of yellow teeth. But it was the size of it that made him gasp. It was bigger than his pony, twice the size of the largest hound in his father's kennel. "It's no freak," Jon said calmly. "That's a direwolf. They grow larger than the other kind." Theon Greyjoy said, "There's not been a direwolf sighted south of the wall in 200 years. "I see one now," Jon replied. Bran tore his eyes away from the monster. That was when he noticed the bundle in Robb's arms. He gave a cry of delight and moved closer. The pup was a tiny ball of grey-black fur. its eyes still closed. It nuzzled blindly against Rob's chest as he cradled it, searching for milk among his letters, making a sad little whimpery sound. Bran reached out hesitantly. "Go on," Rob told him. "You can touch him." Bran gave the pup a quick, nervous stroke, then turned as Jon said, "Here you go." His half-brother put a second pup into his arms. "There are 5 of them." Bran sat down in the snow and hugged the wolf pup to his face. Its fur was soft and warm against his cheek. "Direwolves loose in the realm after so many years," muttered Hullen, the master of horse. "I like it not." "It is a sign," Jory said. Father frowned. "This is only a dead animal, Jory," he said. Yet he seemed troubled. Snow crunched under his boots as he moved around the body. "Do we know what killed her?" "There's something in the throat," Rob told him, proud to have found the answer before his father even asked. "There, just under the jaw." His father knelt and groped under the beast's head with his hand. A foot of shattered antler, tine snapped off, all wet with blood. A sudden silence descended over the party. The men looked at the antler uneasily, and no one dared to speak. Even Bran could sense their fear, though he did not understand. His father tossed the antler to the side and cleansed his hands in the snow. "I'm surprised she lived long enough to whelp," he said. His voice broke the spell. "Maybe she didn't," Jory said. "I've heard tales. Maybe the bitch was already dead when the pups came." "Born with the dead," another man put in. "Worse luck." "No matter," said Hullen. "They be dead soon enough too." Bran gave a wordless cry of dismay. "The sooner the better," Theon Greyjoy agreed. He drew his sword. "Give the beast here, Bran." The little thing squirmed against him as if it heard and understood. "No!" Bran cried out fiercely. "It's mine!" "Put away your sword, Greyjoy," Robb said. For a moment, he sounded as commanding as their father, like the lord he would someday be. "We will keep these pups." "You cannot do that, boy," said Harwin, who was Hullen's son. "It'd be a mercy to kill them," Hullen said. Bran looked to his lord father for rescue, but only got a frown, a furrowed brow. "Hullen speaks truly, son. Better a swift death than a hard one from cold and starvation." "No!" He could feel tears welling in his eyes, and he looked away. He did not want to cry in front of his father. Robb resisted stubbornly. "So Roderick's red bitch whelped again last week," he said. "It was a small litter. Only 2 pups lived. She'll have enough milk. She'll rip them apart when they try to nurse." "She'll rip them apart when they try to nurse?" "Lord Stark," Jon said. It was strange to hear him call father that. So formal. Bran looked at him with desperate hope. "There are 5 pups," he told father. 3 male, 2 females. "What of it, Jon?" "You have 5 true-born children," Jon said. 3 sons, 2 daughters. The direwolf is the sigil of your house. Your children were meant to have these pups, my lord." Bran saw his father's face change, saw the other men exchange glances. He loved Jon with all his heart at that moment. Even at 7, Bran understood what his brother had done. The Count had come right only because Jon had omitted himself. He had included the girls, included even Rickon, the baby, but not the bastard who bore the surname Snow. The name that custom decreed be given to all those in the north unlucky enough to be born with no name of their own. Their father understood as well. "You want no pup for yourself, Jon?" he asked softly. "The direwolf graces the banners of House Stark," Jon pointed out. "I am no Stark, father." Their lord father regarded Jon thoughtfully. Robb rushed into the silence he left. "I will nurse him myself, father," he promised. "I will soak a towel with warm milk and give him suck from that." "Me too," Bran echoed. The lord weighed his sons long and carefully with his eyes. "Easy to say and harder to do. I will not have you wasting the servants' time with this. If you want these pups, you will feed them yourselves. Is that understood?" Bran nodded eagerly. The pup squirmed in his grasp, licked licked at his face with a warm tongue. "You must train them as well," their father said. "You must train them. The Kennel Master will have nothing to do with these monsters, I promise you that. And the gods help you if you neglect them, or brutalize them, or train them badly. These are not dogs to beg for treats and slink off at a kick. A direwolf will rip a man's arm off his shoulder as easily as a dog will kill a rat. Are you sure you want this?" "Yes, father," Bran said. "Yes," Robb agreed. "The pups may die anyway, despite all you do." "They won't die," Robb said. "We won't let them." "Keep them then. Jory, Desmond, gather up the other pups. It's time we were back to Winterfell." It was not until they were mounted and on their way that Bran allowed himself to taste the sweet air of victory. By then, his pup was snuggled inside his leathers, warm against him, safe for the long ride home. Bran was wondering what to name him. Halfway across the bridge, Jon pulled up suddenly. "What is it, Jon?" their Lord Father asked. "Can't you hear it?" "There," Jon said. He swung his horse around and galloped back across the bridge. They watched him dismount where the direwolf lay dead in the snow, watched him kneel. A moment later, he was riding back to them, smiling. "He must have crawled away from the others," Jon said. "Or been driven away," their father said, looking at the sixth pup. His fur was white, where the rest of the litter was grey. His eyes were as red as the blood of the ragged man who had died that morning. Bran thought it curious that this pup alone would have opened his eyes while all the others were still blind. "An albino," Theon Greyjoy said with wry amusement. "This one will die even faster than the others." Jon Snow gave his father's ward a long, chilling look. "I think not, Greyjoy," he said. "This one belongs to me." This is where Bran I ends. Now, there is the mystery of who sent the direwolves. It is theorized that Bloodraven might have sent them to unlock the Stark children's warging abilities, since, as you'll see, the direwolves greatly influence both the story and the Stark children. For example, Greywind wins Robb the battle at Oxcross. Summer saves Bran multiple times and awakens his third eye. Both Arya and Jon Snow have wolf dreams that influence them. Shaggy Dog is the proof that Rickon is the true-born heir to Winterfell, and Lady's death helps awaken Sansa to the savagery at court. The mother direwolf, killed by a shattered antler, convinces Catelyn to send her children away. All in all, the arrival of the direwolves heralded great change and potentially allows a powerful skin changer like Bloodraven to influence the Stark children through their pets. We believe the Side of Ice uses animals to influence events, like warging a boar to kill Robert at the right time, Mormont's Raven helping Jon win the Lord Commander election, Ghost finding the dead rangers which then cross the wall and become whites, spurring the disastrous Great Ranging. Meanwhile, the Side of Fire uses glass candles, which are introduced in A Dance with Dragons to influence people's dreams. However, one really scary thought is that the pet direwolves have been controlled by Bloodraven this whole time. "May I touch your wolf?" The thought made Jon uneasy. "Best not. He will not harm me. You call him Ghost, yes?" "Yes, but Ghost." Melisandre made the word a song. The direwolf padded towards her. Wary, he stalked about her in a circle, sniffing. When she held out her hand, he smelled that too, then shoved his nose against her fingers. Jon let out a white breath. "He is not always so warm." "Warmth calls to warmth, Jon Snow." Her eyes were two red stars, shining in the dark. At her throat, her ruby gleamed, a third eye glowing brighter than the others. Jon had seen Ghost's eyes blazing red the same way, when they caught the light just right. "Ghost," he called, "to me." The direwolf looked at him as if he were a stranger. Jon frowned in disbelief. "That's queer." So this right now could suggest that the powers of ice are forging the direwolves to obey the Stark children, and Melisandre's fire magic repelled the spell Ghost was under. Lastly, the execution of Jared foreshadows that the old gods prefer to receive human sacrifice through weirwood stumps. And as we know in Bran III, A Dance of Dragons, Bran and Bloodraven devour this blood to make themselves stronger. In A Dance with Dragons, Melisandre calls Bran and Bloodraven the champions of the old gods, of the others, the eternal enemy. The wooden man she had glimpsed, though, and the boy with the wolf's face, they were his servants, surely his champions, as Stannis was hers. So, it seems many characters in A Song of Ice and Fire believe there is going to be a battle between fire and ice, or that is what George wants us and his characters to believe. Lastly, how did the pregnant direwolf and Jared get south of the wall? It has been theorized that the Black Gate could have been used, but who opened it for them? Since it can only be opened by a member of the Night's Watch reciting their vows similar to what Sam did in A Storm of Swords. Anyway, we should find out more in The Winds of Winter, and here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. In the show, Will is the deserter being executed, not Jared. In the book, Jared is dead with fear and gives no final words. In contrast, Will tries to warn House Stark about the White Walkers before calling himself a coward and asking word be sent to his family. Everyone looks on solemnly as this happens, not sure what to make of his claim about the White Walkers. It should also be mentioned that many scenes from the book have characters sitting atop horses, while in the TV series they are just standing around since it was easier to film the scenes that way. But a clear distinction between nobility and peasantry is that nobility rarely go outside without riding horses. In the book, Jared's last words are not mentioned. Moreover, Ned does not discuss with Bran what the deserter said. In the next chapter, Ned tells Catelyn that the deserter was half mad. Something had put a fear in him so deep, no one could reach him. There are several additional scenes in the TV series taking place in Winterfell, which introduce the Stark family. Bran is shown practicing archery while his father is watching him. The scene with needlework, which involves Sansa and Arya, comes from Arya I and takes place after King Robert's arrival. Arya is also shown to be an accurate archer, while in the book she doesn't know how to fire a bow and wishes she could learn. Arya has not shot a single arrow in any of the books. In the book, Theon kicks the severed head of the executed deserter and laughs. This action disgusts Jon Snow, who dislikes Theon, and vice versa. In the show, Theon does not kick the severed head of the deserter, and he is shown to be on good terms with Jon before they part ways. In the book, between the execution of the deserter and the discovery of the direwolf pups, Robb and Jon have a riding race. This is omitted in the show. Events of the TV series are 17 years after Robert's rebellion, while in the book they are only 14 years. Thus, the Stark children are each about 3 years older than their ages in the novel. In the book, snow covers the grounds around Winterfell, and the pups are found waist-deep in snow. In the TV series, there is no snow. In the book, the Starks do not find a stag nor any other animal except the direwolf and its puppies. That's it for this chapter. Catelyn I. Catelyn had never liked this Godswood. She had been born at Tully, at Riverrun, far to the south on the Red Fork of the Trident. The Godswood, there was a garden, bright and airy, where tall redwoods spread dappled shadows across tinkling streams, birds sang from hidden nests, and the air was spicy with the scent of flowers. The gods of Winterfell kept a different sort of wood. It was a dark, primal place, 3 acres of old forest untouched for 10,000 years as the gloomy castle rose around it. This was a place of deep silence and brooding shadows, and the gods who lived here had no names. But she knew she would find her husband here tonight. Whenever he took a man's life, afterward he would seek the quiet of the Godswood. Catelyn had been anointed with the 7 oils and named in the rainbow of light that filled the sept of Riverrun. She was of the faith, like her father and grandfather and his father before him. Her gods had names, and their faces were as familiar as the faces of her parents. For her sake, Ned had built a small sept where she might sing to the 7 faces of God. But the blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of the Starks, and his own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. At the center of the grove, an ancient weirwood brooded over a small pool where the waters were black and cold. The Heart Tree, Ned called it. A face had been carved in the trunk of the great tree, its features long and melancholy, the deep-cut eyes red with dried sap and strangely watchful. They were old, those eyes, older than Winterfell itself. They had seen Brandon the Builder set the first stone, if the tales were true. They had watched the castle's granite walls rise around them. It was said that the children of the forest had carved the faces in the trees during the dawn centuries before the coming of the first men across the narrow sea. In the south, the last weirwoods had been cut down or burned out 1,000 years ago, except on the Isle of Faces, where the Green Men kept their silent watch. Up here, it was different. Here, every castle had its godswood, and every godswood had its heart tree, and every heart tree its face. Catelyn found her husband beneath the weirwood, seated on a moss-covered stone. The great sword ice was across his lap, and he was cleaning the blade in those waters black as night. "Ned," she called softly. He lifted his head to look at her. "Catelyn," he said. His voice was distant and formal. "Where are the children?" He would always ask her that. In the kitchen, arguing about names for the wolf pups. Arya is already in love, and Sansa is charmed and gracious, but Rickon is not quite sure. "Is he afraid?" Ned asked. "A little," she admitted. "He is only 3. Ned frowned. He must learn to face his fears. He will not be 3 forever, and winter is coming. Yes, Catelyn agreed. The words gave her a chill, as they always did. The Stark words. Every noble house had its words. Family mottos, touchstones, prayers of sorts. They boasted of honor and glory, promised loyalty and truth, swore faith and courage. All but the Starks. Winter is coming, said the Stark words. Not for the first time, she reflected on what a strange people these Northerners were. The man died well, I'll give him that, Ned said. I was glad for Bran's sake. You would have been proud of Bran. I am always proud of Bran, Catelyn replied, watching the sword as he stroked it. Catelyn had no love for swords, but she could not deny that ice had its own beauty. It had been forged in Valyria before the doom had come to the old freehold, when the ironsmiths had worked their metal with spells as well as hammers. 400 years old it was, and as sharp as the day it was forged. The name it bore was older still, a legacy from the Age of Heroes when the Starks were kings in the north. He was the 4th this year, Ned said grimly. The poor man was half mad. Something had put a fear in him so deep that my words could not reach him. He sighed. Ben writes that the strength of the Night's Watch is down below 1,000. It's not only desertions. They are losing men on rangings as well. Is it the wildlings? She asked. Who else? Ned lifted ice, looked down the cool steel length of it, and it will only grow worse. The day may come when I have no choice but to call the banners and ride north to deal with this king beyond the wall for good and all. Beyond the wall? The thought made Catelyn shudder. Ned saw the dread on her face. Mance Rayder is nothing for us to fear. There are darker things beyond the wall. She glanced behind her at the heart tree, the pale bark and red eyes, watching, listening, thinking its long, slow thoughts. His smile was gentle. You listen to too many of old Nan's stories. The others are as dead as the children of the forest, gone 8,000 years. Maester Lewin will tell you they never lived at all. No living man has ever seen one. Until this morning, no living man had ever seen a direwolf either, Catelyn reminded him. I ought to know better than to argue with a Tully, he said with a rueful smile. He slid ice back to its sheath. You did not come here to tell me crib tales. I know how little you like this place. What is it, my lady? Catelyn took her husband's hand. There was grievous news today, my lord. I did not wish to trouble you until you had cleansed yourself. There was no way to soften the blow, so she told him straight. I am so sorry, my love. Jon Arryn is dead. His eyes found hers, and she could see how hard it took him, as she had known it would. In his youth, Ned had fostered at the Eyrie, and the childless Lord Arryn had become a second father to him and his fellow ward, Robert Baratheon. When the Mad King, Aerys II Targaryen, had demanded their heads, the Lord of the Eyrie had raised his moon and falcon banners in revolt, rather than give those up he had pledged to protect. And one day, 15 years ago, this second father had become a brother as well, as he and Ned stood together in the sept at Riverrun to wed two sisters, the daughters of Lord Hoster Tully. Jon, he said, is the news certain? It was the king's seal, and the letter is in Robert's own hand. I saved it for you. He said Lord Arryn was taken quickly. Even Maester Pycelle was helpless. But he brought the milk of the poppy, so Jon did not linger long in pain. That is some small mercy, I suppose, he said. She could see the grief on his face, but even then he thought first of her. Your sister, he said. And Jon's boy, what word of them? The message said that they were well. The message said only that they were well and had returned to the Eyrie, Catelyn said. I wish they had gone to Riverrun instead. The Eyrie is high and lonely, and it was ever her husband's place, not hers. Lord Jon's memory will haunt each stone. I know my sister. She needs the comfort of family and friends around her. Your uncle waits in the Vale, does he not? Jon named him Knight of the Gate, I'd heard. Catelyn nodded. Brendan will do what he can for her, and for the boy. That is some comfort, but still, go to her, Ned urged. Take the children, fill her halls with noise and shouts and laughter. That boy of hers needs other children about him, and Lysa should not be alone in her grief. Would that I could, Catelyn said. The letter had other tidings. The king is riding to Winterfell to seek you out. It took Ned a moment to comprehend her words, but when the understanding came, the darkness left his eyes. Robert is coming here. When she nodded, a smile broke across his face. Catelyn wished she could share his joy, but she had heard the talk in the yards. A direwolf dead in the snow, a broken antler in its throat. Dread coiled within her like a snake. But she forced herself to smile at this man she loved. This man who put no faith in signs. I knew that would please you, she said. We should send word to your brother on the wall. Yes, of course, he agreed. Ben will want to be here. I shall tell Maester Luwin to send the swiftest bird. Ned rose and pulled her to her feet. Damnation, how many years has it been? And he gives us no more notice than this? How many in his party do the message say? I should think 100 knights, at the least, with all their retainers, and half again as many free riders. Cersei and the children travel with them. Robert will keep an easy pace for their sakes, he said. It's just as well. That will give us more time to prepare. The Queen's brothers are also in the party, she told him. Ned grimaced at that. There was small love between him and the Queen's family, Catelyn knew. The Lannisters of Castle Rock had come late to Robert's cause when victory was all but certain, and he had never forgiven them. Well, if the price for Robert's company is an infestation of Lannisters, so be it. It sounds as though Robert is bringing half his court. Where the king goes, the realm follows, she said. It will be good to see the children. The youngest was still sucking at the Lannister woman's teat the last time I saw him. He must be, what, 5 by now? Prince Tommen is 7, she told him. The same age as Bran, please. The same age as Bran. Please, Ned, guard your tongue. The Lannister woman is our queen, and her pride is said to grow with every passing year. Ned squeezed her hand. There must be a feast, of course, with singers, and Robert will want to hunt. I shall send Jory south with an honor guard to meet them on the King's Road and escort them back. Gods, how are we going to feed them all? On his way already, you said. Damn the man. Damn his royal hide. And this is where Catelyn I, A Game of Thrones ends. This chapter seems to connect the events in Bran III, A Dance with Dragons. It is time, Lord Brendan said. Something in his voice sent icy fingers running up Bran's back. Time for what? For the next step, for you to go beyond skin changing and learn what it means to be a green seer. Inside was a white paste, thick and heavy, with dark red veins running through it. You must eat this, said Leaf. She handed Bran a wooden spoon. The boy looked at the bowl uncertainly. What is it? A paste of weirwood seeds. Something about the look of it made Bran feel ill. The red veins were only weirwood sap, he supposed. But in the torchlight, they looked remarkably like blood. He dipped the spoon into the paste, then hesitated. This paste might actually be Jojen. Will this make me a green seer? Your blood makes you a green seer, said Lord Brendan. This will help you awaken your gifts and wed you to the trees. Bran didn't want to be married to a tree, but who else would wed a broken boy like him? 1,000 eyes, 100 skins, wisdom deep as the roots of ancient trees. A green seer. He ate. It had a bitter taste, though not so bitter as acorn paste. The first spoonful was the hardest to get down. He almost retched it right back up. The second tasted better. The third was almost sweet. The rest he spooned up eagerly. Why had he thought that it was bitter? It tasted of honey, of new-fallen snow, of pepper and cinnamon, and the last kiss his mother ever gave him, and clattered on the cavern floor. I don't feel any different. What happens next? Leaf touched his hand. The trees will teach you. The trees remember. He raised a hand, and the other singers began to move about the cavern, extinguishing the torches one by one. The darkness thickened and crept toward them. Close your eyes, said the three-eyed crow. Slip your skin, as you do when you join with summer, but this time go into the roots instead. Follow them up through the earth to the trees upon the hill, and tell me what you see. Bran closed his eyes and slipped free of his skin, into the weirwood. For an instant he could hear the river rushing by below. Then, all at once, he was back home again. Lord Eddard Stark sat upon a rock beside the deep black pool in the Godswood. The pale roots of the heart tree twisted around him. The greatsword ice lay across Lord Eddard's lap, and he was cleaning the blade with an oilcloth. Winterfell, Bran whispered. His father looked up. Who's there? He asked, turning, and Bran, frightened, pulled away. His father and the black pool and the Godswood faded and were gone, and he was back in the cavern, the pale thick roots of the weirwood throne cradling his limbs as a mother does a child. A torch flared to life before him. Tell us what you saw. So it seems as though Bran visited Ned just before the events of Catelyn I. This, along with the Hodor reveal from Season 6, Episode 5, seems to confirm that Bran can use the weirwood net to influence the past. In a later video, we'll talk about the ways Bran might be responsible for the building of the wall and for Mad King Aerys' insanity. In a desperate hope to stop the White Walker invasion before finally walking inside the body of a human and traveling north of the wall to witness the origins of the others for himself, only to be captured by the children of the forest and turned into the Night King, since Bran might be the most powerful greenseer ever to live, and the White Walker's power of animating the dead is not that dissimilar to Bran's or Varamir's sixth skin ability to walk multiple animals and people at once. Maybe after thousands of years, Bran has learned to walk entire armies of corpses. However, this is pure speculation. Here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. The scene in King's Landing introducing Queen Cersei and her brother Jaime is not in the books. It also shows the corpse of Jon Arryn. In the book, the conversation between Jaime and Cersei about Jon Arryn's death and their secrets occur when Bran discovers them having sex at Winterfell in Bran II, A Game of Thrones. There is no mention in the novels that Jaime ever jumped off the cliffs at Castle Rock. In the books, the conversation between Ned and Catelyn about Mance Rayder is omitted, and so is the situation at the Wall, where Ned remarks that he might need to call his banners and march north of the Wall to defeat Mance Rayder in battle. Moreover, the news that Lysa has gone to the Eyrie is introduced later in the show. Everything else that is omitted from the books includes Catelyn remarking that Lysa should have gone to Riverrun instead of the Eyrie to be with family, Ned informing us that Brynden Tully is at the Eyrie and will be able to give Lysa comfort. Ned's suggestion that Catelyn should take the children and visit Lysa. Lastly, Ned is way happier to hear that Robert is traveling to Winterfell, while in the TV show, he looks miserable. That's it for this chapter. Daenerys I. Her brother held the gown up for her inspection. This is beauty. Touch it. Go on. Caress the fabric. Dany touched it. Is it really mine? A gift from the Magister Illyroy. Viserys said, smiling. Her brother was in a high mood tonight. The color will bring out the violet in your eyes, and you shall have gold as well, and jewels of all sorts. Illyroy has promised. Tonight you must look like a princess. A princess, Dany thought. She had forgotten what that was like. Perhaps she had never really known. Why does he give us so much? She asked. What does he want from us? For nigh on half a year they had lived in the Magister's house, eating his food, pampered by his servants. Dany was 13, old enough to know that such gifts seldom come without their price, here in the free city of Pentos. Illyroy is no fool, Viserys said. The Magister knows that I will not forget my friends when I come into my throne. Dany said nothing. Magister Illyroy was a dealer in spices, gemstones, dragonbone, and other less savory things. He had friends in all of the 9 free cities, it was said, and even beyond. In Vaes Dothrak and the fabled lands beside the Jade Sea. It was also said that he'd never had a friend he wouldn't cheerfully sell for the right price. Dany listened to the talk in the streets, and she heard these things, but she knew better than to question her brother when he wove his webs of dreams. His anger was a terrible thing when roused. Viserys called it waking the dragon. Her brother hung the gown beside the door. Illyroy will send the slaves to bathe you. Be sure you wash off the stink of the stables. Khal Drogo has 1,000 horses. Tonight, he looks for a different sort of mount. He studied her critically. You still slouch. Straighten yourself. He pushed back her shoulders with his hands. Let them see that you have a woman's shape now. His fingers brushed lightly over her budding breasts and tightened on a nipple. You will not fail me tonight. If you do, it will go hard for you. You don't want to wake the dragon, do you? His fingers twisted her, the pinch cruelly hard through the rough fabric of her tunic. Do you? He repeated. No, Dany said meekly. Her brother smiled. Good. He touched her hair, almost with affection. When they write the history of my reign, sweet sister, they will say it began tonight. In the Free Cities, they talked of Westeros and the Sunset Kingdoms. Her brother had a simpler name. Our land, he called it. The words were like a prayer with him. If he said them enough, the gods were sure to hear. Ours by blood right, taken from us by treachery, but ours still, ours forever. You do not steal from the dragon. Oh no, the dragon remembers. And perhaps the dragon did remember, but Dany could not. She had never seen this land her brother said was theirs, this realm beyond the narrow sea, these places he talked of, Castle Rock and the Eyrie, High Garden and the Vale of Arryn, Dawn and the Isle of Faces. They were just words to her. Viserys had been a boy of 8 when they fled King's Landing to escape the advancing armies of the usurper, but Daenerys had been only a quickening in their mother's womb. Yet, sometimes Dani would picture the way it had been. So often had her brother told her the stories. The midnight flight to Dragonstone, moonlight shimmering on a ship's black sails, her brother Rhaegar battling the usurper in the bloody waters of the Trident, and dying for the woman he loved. The sack of King's Landing by the one Viserys called the usurper's dogs, the Lords Lannister and Stark. Princess Elia of Dorne pleading for mercy as Rhaegar's heir was ripped from her breast and murdered before her eyes. The polished skulls of the last dragon staring down sightlessly from the walls of the throne room while the Kingslayer opened father's throat with a golden sword. Dany's mother had died birthing her, and for that her brother Viserys had never forgiven her. She did not remember Dragonstone either. They had run again, just before the usurper's brother set sail with his new-built fleet. By then, only Dragonstone itself, the ancient seat of their house, had remained of the 7 kingdoms that had once been theirs. It would not remain for long. The garrison had been prepared to sell them to the usurper, but one night Sir Willem Darry and 4 loyal men had broken into the nursery and stolen them both, along with her wet nurse, and set sail under cover of darkness for the safety of the Braavosian coast. She remembered Sir Willem dimly, a great grey bear of a man, half-blind, roaring and bellowing orders from his sickbed. The servants had lived in terror of him, but he had always been kind to Dany, little princess, and sometimes my lady, and his hands were soft as old leather. He never left his bed though, and the smell of sickness clung to him day and night, a hot, moist, sickly sweet odour. That was when they lived in Braavos, in the big house with the red door. Dany had her own room there, with a lemon tree outside her window. After Sir Willem had died, the servants had stolen what little money they had left, and soon after they had been put out of the big house. Dany had cried when the red door closed behind them forever. They had wandered since then, from Braavos to Myr, from Myr to Tyrosh, and on to Qohor and the Lantis and Lys, never staying long in any one place. Her brother would not allow it. The usurper's hired knives were close behind them, he insisted, though Dany had never seen one. At first, the magisters and archons and merchant princes were pleased to welcome the last Targaryens to their homes and tables. But as the years passed and the usurper continued to sit upon the Iron Throne, doors closed and their lives grew meaner. Years past they had been forced to sell their last few treasures, and now even the coin they had gotten from Mother's crown had gone. In the alleys and wine sinks of Pentos, they called her brother the Beggar King. Dany did not want to know what they called her. "We will have it all back someday, sweet sister," he would promise her. Sometimes his hands shook when he talked about it. The jewels and the silks, Dragonstone and King's Landing, the Iron Throne and the 7 kingdoms, all they have taken from us, we will have it back. Viserys lived for that day. All that Daenerys wanted back was the big house with the red door, the lemon tree outside her window, the childhood she had never known. There came a soft knock on her door. "Come," Dany said, turning away from the window. Illyroy's servants entered, bowed and set about their business. They were slaves, a gift from one of the Magister's many Dothraki friends. There was no slavery in the free cities of Pentos. Nonetheless, they were slaves. They filled her bath with hot water brought up from the kitchen and scented it with fragrant oils. The girl pulled the rough cotton tunic over Dany's head and helped her into the tub. The water was scalding hot, but Daenerys did not flinch or cry out. She liked the heat. It made her feel clean. Besides, her brother had often told her that it was never too hot for a Targaryen. "Ours is the house of the dragon," he would say. The fire is in our blood." The old woman washed her long silver pale hair and gently combed out the snags, all in silence. The girl scrubbed her back and her feet and told her how lucky she was. "Drogo is so rich that even his slaves wear golden collars. 100,000 men ride in his Khalasar, and his palace in Vaestorthrak has 200 rooms and doors of solid silver." Daenerys said nothing. She had always assumed that she would wed Viserys when she came of age. For centuries, the Targaryens had married brother to sister, since Aegon the Conqueror had taken his sisters to bride. The line must be kept pure, Viserys had told her 1,000 times. Theirs was the king's blood, the golden blood of old Valyria, the blood of the dragon. Dragons did not mate with the beasts of the field, and Targaryens did not mingle their blood with that of lesser men. Yet now Viserys schemed to sell her to a stranger, a barbarian. When she was clean, the slaves helped her from the water and towed her dry. They dressed her in the wisps that Magister Illyroy had sent up, and then the gown and a deep plum silk to bring out the violet in her eyes. "Now you look all a princess," the girl said, breathlessly when they were done. Dani glanced at her image in a silvered looking glass that Illyroy had so thoughtfully provided. A princess, she thought. But she remembered what the girl had said, how Khal Drogo was so rich even his slaves wore golden collars. She felt a sudden chill, and goose flesh pimpled her bare arms. Her brother was waiting in the cool of the entry hall, seated on the edge of the pool, his hand trailing in the water. He rose when she appeared and looked over her critically. "Stand there," he told her. "Turn around. Yes, good. You look regal," Magister Illyroy said, stepping through an archway. He moved with surprising delicacy for such a massive man. "May the Lord of Light shower you with blessings on this most fortunate day, Princess Daenerys," the Magister said as he took her hand. He bowed his head, showing a thin glimpse of crooked yellow teeth through the gold of his beard. "She is a vision, Your Grace, a vision," he told her brother. "Drogo will be enraptured." "She's too skinny," Viserys said. "Are you sure that Khal Drogo likes his women this young?" "She has had her blood. She is old enough for the Khal," Illyroy told him, not for the first time. "Look at her, that silver gold hair, those purple eyes. She is the blood of old Valyria, no doubt, no doubt. And highborn, daughter of the old king, sister to the new. She cannot fail to entrance our Drogo." "I suppose," her brother said, doubtfully, "the savages have queer tastes. Boys, horses, sheep." "Best not suggest that to Khal Drogo," Illyroy said. Anger flashed in her brother's lilac eyes. "Do you take me for a fool?" The Magister bowed slightly. "I take you for a king. Kings lack the caution of common men. My apologies if I have given offense." "We won't need his whole Khalasar," Viserys said. His fingers toyed with the hilt of his borrowed blade, though Dani knew he had never used a sword in earnest. 10,000, that would be enough. I could sweep the Seven Kingdoms with 10,000 Dothraki screamers. The realm will rise for its rightful king. Tyrell, Redwyn, Darry, Greyjoy, they have no more love for the usurper than I do. The Dornishmen burn to avenge Elia and her children, and the small folk will be with us. They cry out for their king. He looked at Illyroy anxiously. "They do, don't they?" "They are your people, and they love you well," Magister Illyroy said, amiably. "In Holdfast all across the realm, men lift secret toasts to your health, while women sew dragon banners and hide them against the day of your return from across the water." He gave a massive shrug. "Or so my agents tell me." Dani had no agents, no way of knowing what anyone was doing or thinking across the narrow sea. But she mistrusted Illyroy's sweet words as she mistrusted everything about Illyroy. Her brother was nodding eagerly, however. "I shall kill the usurper myself," he promised, who had never killed anyone, "as he killed my brother Rhaegar, and Lannister too. the Kingslayer, for what he did to my father." "That would be most fitting," Magister Illaroy said. Dani saw the smallest hint of a smile playing around his full lips, but her brother did not notice. The free cities were always generous with the horse lords. "It is not that we fear these barbarians," Illaroy would explain with a smile. "The Lord of Light would hold our city walls against 1,000,000 Dothraki, or so the Red Priest promised. Yet, why take chances when their friendship comes so cheap? Many important men will be at the feast tonight. Such men have enemies. The Cal must protect his guests. Yourself chief among them, your grace. No doubt the usurper would pay well for your head." "Oh yes," Viserys said darkly. "He has tried, Illaroy, I promise you that. His hired knives follow us everywhere. I am the last dragon, and he will not sleep easy while I live." As the guests arrived, many were Dothraki horse lords, big men with red-brown skin, their drooping mustachios bound in metal rings, their black hair oiled and braided and hung with bells. Yet among them moved bravos and sellswords from Pentos and Mia and Tyrosh, a red priest even fatter than Illaroy, hairy men from the port of Ibn, and lords from the Summer Isles with skin as black as ebony. Daenerys looked at them all in wonder, and realized with a sudden start of fear that she was the only woman there. Illaroy whispered to them, "Those three are Dothraki's blood riders. There," he said. "By the pillar is Khal Moro, with his son Rigoro. The man with the green beard is brother to the Archon of Tyrosh, and the man behind him is Ser Jorah Mormont. The last name caught Daenerys. A knight? No less." Illaroy smiled through his beard. "Anointed with the 7 oils by the High Septon himself. What is he doing here?" she blurted. "The usurper wanted his head," Illaroy told them. "Some trifling affront. He sold some poachers to a Tyroshi slaver instead of giving them to the Night's Watch. Absurd law. A man should be able to do as he likes with his own cattle." "I shall wish to speak with Ser Jorah before the night is done," her brother said. Dani found herself looking at the knight curiously. He was an older man, past 40 and balding, but still strong and fit. She was still looking at this strange man from the homeland she had never known when Magister Illaroy placed a moist hand on her bare shoulder. "Over there, sweet princess," he whispered. "There is the Khal himself." Dani wanted to run and hide, but her brother was looking at her, and if she displeased him, she knew she would wake the dragon. Anxiously, she turned and looked at the man Viserys hoped would ask to wed her before the night was done. The slave girl had not been far wrong, she thought. Khal Drogo was a head taller than the tallest man in the room, yet somehow light on his feet, as graceful as the panther in Illaroy's menagerie. He was younger than she thought, no more than 30. His skin was the color of polished copper, his thick mustachios bound with gold and bronze rings. "I must go and make my submissions," Magister Illaroy said. "Wait here, I shall bring him to you." Her brother took her by the arm as Illaroy waddled over to the Khal, his fingers squeezing so hard they hurt. "Do you see his braid, sweet sister? You see how long it is?" Viserys said. "When Dothraki are defeated in combat, they cut off their braids in disgrace, so the world will know their shame. Khal Drogo has never lost a fight. He is Aegon the Dragon Lord come again, and you will be his queen." Dani looked at Khal Drogo, his face hard and cruel, his eyes as cold and dark as onyx. Her brother hurt her sometimes when she woke the dragon, but he did not frighten her the way this man frightened her. "I don't want to be his queen," she heard herself say in a small, thin voice. Please, Viserys, I don't want to. I want to go home." "Home?" He kept his voice low, but she could hear the fury in his tone. "How are we to go home, sweet sister? They took our home from us." He drew her into the shadows, out of sight, his fingers digging into her skin. "How are we to go home?" he repeated, meaning King's Landing and Dragonstone, and all the realm they had lost. Dani had only meant their rooms in Illaroy's estate, No true home surely, though all they had. But her brother did not want to hear that. There was no home there for him. Even the big house with the red door had not been home for him. His fingers dug hard into her arm, demanding an answer. "I don't know," she said at last, her voice breaking. Tears welled in her eyes. "I do," he said sharply. "We go home with an army, sweet sister. With Khal Drogo's army. That is how we go home. And if you must wed him and bed him for that, you will." He smiled at her. "I'd let his whole Khalasar F you if need be, sweet sister. All 40,000 men, and their horses too, if that is what it took to get my army. Be grateful it is only Drogo. In time, you may even learn to like him. Now dry your eyes, Illyroy is bringing him over, and he will not see you crying." Dani turned and saw that it was true. Magister Illyroy, all smiles and bows, was escorting Khal Drogo over to where they stood. She brushed away unfallen tears with the back of her hand. "Smile," Viserys whispered nervously, his hand falling to the hilt of his sword. "And stand up straight. Let him see that you have breasts. Gods know you have little enough as it is." Daenerys smiled and stood up straight. And this is where Daenerys I ends. Now, it has been theorized and confirmed by George himself that Daenerys' memories of the House of the Red Door are either partially false or completely fabricated, since it has been proven beyond a doubt that lemons do not grow in Braavos. The first evidence for Daenerys' memories being a lie comes from Arya II in A Storm of Swords, when the innkeeper's wife says, "Lemons, and where would we get lemons? Does this look like Dawn to you, you freckled fool?" So, looking at a map, lemons can only grow in arid climates, and if the riverlands are north of Dawn and cannot grow lemons, then there is no way that lemons could grow in Braavos, which is described as having cold and miserable weather. However, the conclusive proof comes from the Mercy sample chapter, where Arya overhears a Lannister guard complain about the Braavosi weather. "7 hells, this place is damp," she heard her guard complain. "I am chilled to the bones. Where are the bloody orange trees? I always heard there were orange trees in the free cities. Lemons and limes. Where are the bare-bellied girls, I ask you?" "Down in Lys and Myr and Old Volantis," the other guard replied. He was an older, big-bellied and grizzled. "I went to Lys with Lord Tywin once when he was hand to Ares. Braavos is north of King's Landing, fool. Can't you read a bloody map?" Anyway, this seems to prove that lemons don't grow in Braavos. Here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. Targaryens have violet eyes in the books, but this trait was dropped from the series. The showrunners have said that they did use purple contacts early in filming, but this interfered with the actors' performances. In the book, Daenerys, Viserys, and Illyroy go to Drogo's manse and attend a party to celebrate Drogo and Daenerys' engagement. Many important people appear in this party, including guests from other free cities, several other cows, sellswords from Pentos, Myr, and Tyrosh, a red priest even fatter than Illyroy, hairy men from the port of Ibn, and lords from the Summer Isles. Jorah Mormont is first seen at this party, but does not speak. What is also really cool is that Illyroy has invited a red priestess, which foreshadows Illyroy's plan of using the R'hllor followers in Volantis to support Daenerys, and, by extension, Aegon in A Dance with Dragons, which is some great foreshadowing. In the show, Drogo simply rides up to Illyroy's manse with his Blood Rider to assess Daenerys before their wedding. That's about it for this chapter. Eddard I. The king's party swept into Winterfell in a long gleaming torrent, the gold and silver of their armor flashing beneath the northern sky. 300 men rode in his service, knights and free riders, sworn swords and bannermen, their golden banners tossing in the wind with the crowned stag of Baratheon. Ned recognized many faces among them. Sir Jaime Lannister rode like a figure carved from bright gold. Sandor Clegane followed, half his face lost to old flame. Beside him rode the tall crown prince, and behind them came the crooked silhouette of Tyrion Lannister. But the massive man who led the party barely resembled the companion Ned had once known. Only when he leaped from his warhorse and seized Ned in a crushing embrace did memory bridge the years. "Ned! Ah, but it is good to see that frozen face of yours." The king laughed as he looked Ned up and down. "You have not changed at all." Ned could not return the same truth. The Robert he remembered from the wars had been lean and hard as forged steel, clean-shaven and clear-eyed, towering above his men with the easy strength of a born warrior. In those days, leather and blood had been his scent, and his warhammer had seemed almost an extension of his own arm. Now perfume clung to him, sweet and heavy, and the swollen weight he carried diminished none of his height, but changed everything else. Ned had last seen him 9 years ago, when the stag and the direwolf had joined to crush Balon Greyjoy's rebellion. Since that night in the broken halls of Pike, Robert had added 8 stone and a beard thick enough to shadow his jowls. Nothing could hide the fatigue in his eyes. Still, Robert was his king. "Your Grace, Winterfell is yours." The Queen, Cersei Lannister, arrived on foot with her youngest children, the wheelhouse too wide for Winterfell's gate. Ned knelt to kiss Cersei's ring while Robert embraced Catelyn Stark with the rough warmth he gave old friends. Their children were brought forth, introduced and judged, the formality swift and cold in the northern air. When the courtesies ended, Robert spoke at once. "Take me down to your crypt, Eddard. I would pay my respects." Ned felt a quiet gratitude that the king still remembered her and took up a lantern. No further words were needed. The queen began a mild protest about the long ride and the cold, but Robert silenced her with a single look. Jaime Lannister guided her away, and she fell quiet. Down the narrow stone steps they descended, lantern light swaying. "I was starting to think we would never reach Winterfell," Robert grumbled. "In the south, the way they talk about my 7 kingdoms, a man forgets that your part is as big as the other 6 combined." "I trust you enjoyed the journey, Your Grace," Robert snorted. "Bogs and forests and fields, and scarcely a decent inn north of the Neck. I've never seen such a vast emptiness. Where are all your people?" "Likely they were too shy to come out," Ned said dryly. "Kings are a rare sight in the north." "More likely they were hiding under the snow." "Snow, Ned!" He braced himself against the wall, panting softly. "Late summer snows are common enough," Ned said. "I hope they did not trouble you. They are usually mild." "The others take your mild snow. What will this place be like in winter? I shudder to think." "The winters are hard," Ned said. "But the Starks will endure. We always have." "You need to come south," Robert told him. "You need a taste of summer before it flees. In Highgarden there are fields of golden roses that stretch away as far as the eye can see. The fruits are so ripe they explode in your mouth. Melons, peaches, fire plums. You've never tasted such sweetness. You'll see. I brought you some. Even at storm's end, with that good wind off the bay, the days are so hot you can barely move. And you ought to see the towns, Ned. Flowers everywhere, the markets bursting with food, the summer wine so cheap and so good that you can get drunk just breathing the air. Everyone is fat and drunk and rich." He laughed, the sound rolling down the crypt like it had flesh and weight, and he thumped his stomach with pride. "And the girls, Ned," he exclaimed, eyes gleaming. "I swear, women lose all modesty in the heat. They swim naked in the river, right beneath the castle. Even in the streets, it's too damn hot for wool or fur, so they go around in these short gowns, silk if they have the silver, and cotton if not. But it's all the same when they start sweating, and the cloth sticks to their skin. They might as well be naked." The king's laughter boomed, echoing deep among the stone lords of Winterfell. Ned listened, unable to ignore how winded the king sounded when they reached the crypt floor. "Your Grace," Ned murmured, The lantern's glow swept across long rows of pillars and the cold watchers who sat enthroned in stone. Lords of Winterfell stared blindly through the dark. Direwolves curled at their feet. Iron swords lay rusting on their laps, ancient guardians against restless spirits. Ned wondered whether the oldest ghost had slipped free. She is down at the end, with father and Brandon. Robert frowned, shivering despite his great bulk. Their steps echoed as they passed the Starks of ages past, carved faces flickering to life in the shifting lantern glow. At the final row of sealed tombs, Ned lifted the lantern. Here. Robert knelt before the tombs of Lord Rickard Stark and his children. The stone mason had carved Ned's father with stern dignity, sword held tight, though steel had not saved him in life. Brandon's likeness was youthful and proud, the true heir strangled before he could wed, and Lyanna, only 16, lovely even in stone. Ned felt the familiar ache. She was more beautiful than that, Robert said, staring at her face. He rose heavily. Ah, damn it, Ned. Did you have to bury her in a place like this? She deserved more than darkness. She was a Stark of Winterfell. This is her place. She should be on a hill somewhere, under a fruit tree with the sun and clouds above her, and the rain to wash her clean. I was with her when she died, Ned said quietly. She wanted to come home, to rest beside Brandon and father. He remembered the faint voice begging, "Promise me," the fear in her eyes melting only when he gave her his word. He remembered the crushed petals in her hand. He remembered almost nothing after. "I bring her flowers when I can," he said. Lyanna was fond of flowers. Robert touched her cheek, his fingers brushing the stone as though it lived. "I vowed to kill Rhaegar for what he did to her." "You did. Only once." Robert's voice hardened as he recalled the ford of the Trident and the dragon prince armored in rubies. The hammer blow, the shattered breastplate, the river burning red. "In my dreams, I kill him every night," Robert said. "1,000 deaths will still be less than he deserves." Ned offered no reply. "We should return, Your Grace," he finally said. "Your wife will be waiting." "The others take my wife," Robert muttered sourly. But he turned back the way they had come, heavy steps echoing in the cold hall. "And if I hear Your Grace once more, I'll have your head on a spike. We are more to each other than that." "I had not forgotten," Ned replied quietly. With no response from the king, he said, "Tell me about Jon." Robert shook his head as they walked beneath the stone eyes of dead Starks. "I have never seen a man sicken so quickly. We gave a tourney on my son's name day. If you had seen Jon then, you would have sworn he would live forever. A fortnight later, he was dead. The sickness was like a fire in his gut. It burned right through him." He paused beside the tomb of an ancient Stark. "I love that old man." "We both did." "Catelyn fears for her sister. How does Lysa bear her grief?" "Not well in truth," Robert admitted. "I think losing Jon has driven the woman mad, Ned. She has taken the boy back to the Eyrie, against my wishes. I had hoped to foster him with Tywin Lannister at Castle Rock. Jon had no brothers, no other sons. Was I supposed to leave him to be raised by a woman?" Ned wouldn't even fathom trusting Lord Tywin with a child, but kept quiet. "The wife has lost the husband," he said carefully. "Perhaps the mother feared to lose the son. The boy is very young." "6 and sickly, and Lord of the Eyrie, gods have mercy," the king swore. Lord Tywin had never taken a ward before. Lysa ought to have been honored. The Lannisters are a great and noble house. She refused to even hear of it. Then she left in the dead of night, without so much as a by your leave. Cersei was furious. He sighed deeply. "The boy is my namesake. Did you know that? Robert Arryn. I am sworn to protect him. How can I do that if his mother steals him away?" "I will take him as ward, if you wish," Ned said. "Lysa should consent to that. She and Catelyn were close as girls, and she would be welcome here as well." "A generous offer, my friend," the king said, "but too late. Lord Tywin has already given his consent. fostering the boy elsewhere would be a grievous affront to him. I have more concern for my nephew's welfare than I do for Lannister pride, Ned declared. That is because you do not sleep with a Lannister, Robert laughed, the sound rattling among the tombs and bouncing from the vaulted ceiling. His smile was a flash of white teeth in the thicket of the huge black beard. Ah, Ned, he said, you are still too serious. He put a massive arm around Ned's shoulder. I had planned to wait a few days to speak to you, but I see now there's no need for it. Come, walk with me. You must have wondered why I finally came north to Winterfell, after so long. For the joy of my company, surely, he said lightly. And there is the wall, you need to see it, your grace. To walk along its battlements and talk to those who man it. The Night's Watch is a shadow of what it once was, Benjen says, no doubt I will hear what your brother says soon enough, Robert said. The wall has stood for what, 8,000 years? It can keep a few more days. I have more pressing concerns. These are difficult times. I need good men about me, men like Jon Arryn. He served as Lord of the Eyrie, as Warden of the East, and as Hand of the King. He will not be easy to replace. His son will succeed to the Eyrie and all its incomes, Robert said, brusquely. No more. Ned stopped in surprise. The Arryns have always been Wardens of the East. The title goes with the domain. Perhaps when he comes of age, the honor can be restored to him, Robert said. I have this year to think of, and next. A 6-year-old boy is no war leader, Ned. In peace, the title is only an honor. Let the boy keep it, for his father's sake, if not his own. Surely you owe Jon that much for his service. Jon's service was the duty he owed his liege lord. I am not ungrateful, Ned. You of all men ought to know that. But the son is not the father. A mere boy cannot hold the East. Enough of this. There is a more important office to discuss, and I would not argue with you. Robert grabbed Ned's elbow. I have need of you, Ned. I am yours to command, your grace, always. Robert scarcely heard him. Those years we spent in the Eyrie, gods, those were good years. I want you at my side again, Ned. I want you down in King's Landing. Not up here at the end of the world where you are no damned use to anybody. I swear to you, sitting a throne is 1,000 times harder than winning one. Laws are a tedious business, and counting coppers is worse. And the people, there is no end of them. I sit on the damnable iron chair and listen to them complain until my mind is numb and my arse is raw. They all want something, money, or land, or justice. The lies they tell. And my lords and ladies are no better. I am surrounded by flatterers and fools. It can drive a man to madness, Ned. Half of them don't dare tell me the truth, and the other half can't find it. There are nights I wish we had lost at the Trident. No, not truly, but I understand, Ned said softly. Robert looked at him. I think you do. If so, you're the only one, my old friend. Lord Eddard Stark, I would name you the Hand of the King. Ned knelt. He had expected it, but dread pulled in him. The Hand ruled in the king's stead, commanded armies, upheld justice. It was a burden as vast as the realm. Your Grace, I am not worthy of the honor. Robert groaned with good-humored impatience. If I wanted to honor you, I'd let you retire. I am planning to make you run the kingdom and fight the wars while I eat and drink and wench myself into an early grave. He slapped his gut and smiled. You know the saying about the king and his hand? What the king dreams, the hand builds. Robert laughed. I betted a fish maid once who told me the lowborn have a choicier way to put it. The king eats, they say, and the hand takes the shit. He threw back his head and laughed. Damn it, Ned, the king complained. You might at least humor me with a smile. They say it grows so cold up here in winter that a man's laughter freezes in his throat and chokes him to death, Ned replied. Perhaps that is why the Starks have so little humor. Come south with me, and I'll teach you to laugh again, the king promised. You helped me win this damnable throne, now help me hold it. We were meant to rule together. If Lyanna had lived, we should have been brothers, bound by blood as well as affection. Well, it's not too late. I have a son, you have a daughter. My Joff and your Sansa shall join our houses, as Lyanna and I might have once done." Ned was surprised by this offer. Sansa is only 11, old enough for betrothal. The marriage can wait a few years. The king smiled. "Now stand up and say yes, curse you." Ned felt the weight of the situation. "Nothing would give me greater pleasure, your grace," Ned answered. He hesitated. "These honors are also unexpected. May I have some time to consider? I need to tell my wife." Yes, of course. Tell Catelyn, sleep on it if you must." The king pulled Ned roughly to his feet. "Just don't keep me waiting too long. I am not the most patient of men." As they turned back toward the light, Ned felt a creeping dread. This was his place, among the stone figures of his line, beneath the earth. The crypt seemed to whisper warnings the king could not hear. Winter is coming. And this is where Eddard I, A Game of Thrones ends. Now, it is suspicious that Ned buried Lyanna and Brandon in the crypts of Winterfell, because even though Ned tells us this is what Lyanna wanted, statues are only meant for the lords and kings of Winterfell. There are many theories for why Lyanna was buried in the crypts, but none of them seem conclusive as to why she was buried there. We believe there was probably a baby swap at the Tower of Joy involving House Dane and the Kingsguard. We also believe Mance Rayder is secretly Sir Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning, since he was able to best Jon Snow in single combat in A Dance with Dragons, and knows way too much about Westeros and the Seven Kingdoms for an ordinary turncloak. But again, this is just speculation. In future videos, we'll come back to the baby swap idea and Mance Rayder being Sir Arthur Dayne. Here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. Tyrion's appearance is different to his description in the books. He has stunted legs, a swollen forehead, a squashed-in face, and eyes of different colors. He walks with a profound waddle. Unlike in the show, the book does not describe the following scenes: Catelyn and Luwin preparing for the feast, Robb, Theon, and Jon grooming themselves for the arrival of the royal party, Bran sighting the royal party on the top of the wall, Catelyn scolding Bran for climbing up the wall, Arya watching the arrival of the royal party, House Stark and their retainers lining up to greet the royal party, and Arya's whimsy late arrival. In the book, the wheelhouse Cersei and the royal children travel in is huge. In the show, the wheelhouse is much smaller and is pulled by lesser horses into the castle. Tyrion's introduction in the books is different. In the show, he is introduced in a scene with the prostitute Ross after Robert Baratheon's arrival. Ross doesn't exist in the books. In the TV series, she is a reoccurring character. In the book, Robert does not place a feather in the hand of Lyanna's statue. And lastly, both Tommen and Marcella are presented before the Stark children in the book, and vice versa. That's about it for this chapter. Jon 1. As Jon Snow refilled his wine cup, he was thinking about how being a bastard wasn't always a bad thing. Sitting on the bench amongst the squires, he took a sip of summer wine and smiled. Winterfell's great hall was filled with smoke and the smell of roasting meat and freshly baked. The walls were covered in banners. The direwolf of the Stark house, the stag of the Baratheons, and the Lannister lion. A singer played the harp, but his voice was tuned out by the conversation and overall clutter of the feast. For 4 hours, the banquet was proceeding. Jon's younger siblings were seated with the king's own children, just beneath the platform on which the king and queen themselves dined, in the company of Lord and Lady Stark. Jon knew that his father, Lord Eddard, would allow a cup of wine for the others to commemorate the king's arrival, but no more. Here with the squires, Jon drank to his heart's content freely, and his heart wished to drink more. This delighted the squires, who urged him to drain yet another cup. They were cheerful fellows. And Jon enjoyed their stories about battles, hunting, and women. Jon was certain that the company he found himself was more entertaining than the king's children. As the visitors entered the hall, he had a good look at them all, quenching his curiosity. First had come Jon's father, Lord Eddard, accompanying the queen. Cersei was as beautiful as Jon heard, with her golden hair and emerald eyes. But as Lord Eddard led her up to the podium, Jon noticed that the woman never once looked up at his father. Even at his young age of 14, Jon knew what that meant. Next had been the king himself, Robert Baratheon, with Lady Stark on his side. Jon has heard the tales of Robert, the unmatched warrior, demon of the trident. But all he could see was a sweating fat man who walked as if he was drunk already. Jon felt disappointed. The royal children have followed, mixed with Lord Eddard's other offspring. Rickon Stark was the first, tottering as a 3-year-old would, and behind him Jon's half-brother, Robb. He was leading Princess Marcella, a wisp of a girl who Jon had found boring at first sight, with her golden hair and shy looks. Robb was still grinning as he led the young girl towards her seat. The princes came escorted by Jon's sisters, Arya and Sansa. Arya was leading Tommen, a plump boy with very blonde long hair, while Sansa, the older of the two, had gotten the crown prince, Joffrey. The prince inherited his mother's curls and green eyes, and though only 12, was already taller than Jon or even Robb. Jon found his disdainful looks at Winterfell's Great Hall disrespectful and decided he didn't like the crown prince. After he had dismissed the future king, Jon turned his attention to the men accompanying him, the Lion and the Imp. They called them Lannisters of Castle Rock, brothers of the Queen. So Jaime Lannister was the Queen's twin brother, tall and blonde with the same emerald eyes, showing a sharp smile. He wore Lannister colors and the lion on his chest. That's what his peers called him, at least face to face. The Lion of Lannister. Behind his back, however, he was known as the Kingslayer. As Jaime Lannister walked past him, Jon thought that this was what a real king should look like. Jon looked at the other brother, Tyrion Lannister. All that was given to Jaime and Cersei had been denied from their younger brother. Tyrion was a dwarf, with a brutish face under a strong brow, hair almost white, eyes mismatching, one green and one black. Jon watched. It was fascinating as the small man was trying to keep up with his brother. Bringing up the rear had come Jon's uncle, Benjen Stark of the Night's Watch, and Lord Eddard's ward, Theon Greyjoy. While Benjen gave Jon a friendly smile, Theon ignored him altogether, though that was nothing new. Once everyone had a seat, toasts and thanks were given. Then, finally, the feast had begun. Jon started to drink then, and was still doing so now. Something rubbed against his leg beneath the table. Jon saw red eyes staring up at him. "Hungry again?" he asked. Jon started to tear a leg off the honey chicken for Ghost, but thought better of it, and gave the whole thing to the direwolf, who started to devour in eerie silence. Though his siblings had been forbidden to bring their direwolf pups to the feast, nobody had cared about Jon's, and he thought this to be another perk of being a bastard. He drank some more as Ghost ate the chicken. Dogs were allowed in too, moving around the tables, following servers. A black dog with yellow eyes spotted Ghost and his chicken. He came close to get her share. Jon watched as the dog growled at the direwolf, who just looked up silently, fixing red eyes at the dog. She snapped at him, and Ghost finally bared his own fangs. Though 3 times the size of the direwolf, the dog decided the chicken wasn't worth it, as she went away. Ghost returned to his meal. Jon grinned and gave a pat to the white wolf under the table. Ghost nipped at his hand in a friendly manner. "Is this one of the direwolves I've heard so much of?" a familiar voice asked. Jon looked up at his uncle, and the man ruffled his hair. "Yes," he said, "his name is Ghost." A squire slid aside on the bench to give room to Benjen, and the man sat and took Jon's cup. "Summer wine," he said after a sip. "Nothing so sweet. How many cups have you had, Jon?" Jon smiled. Benjen Stark laughed. As I feared. Ah well, I believe I was younger than you the first time I got truly and sincerely drunk. He picked a roasted onion dripping brown with gravy from a nearby trencher and bit into it. It crunched. Benjen Stark was a gaunt man with sharp features, but always with laughter in his blue eyes. As a man of the Night's Watch, he was wearing all black, though tonight this was rich velvet too. He had a heavy silver chain around his neck. The man watched Ghost as he ate his onion. A very quiet wolf, he observed. He's not like the others, Jon said. He never makes a sound. That's why I named him Ghost. That, and because he's white. The others are all dark, grey or black. There are still direwolves beyond the wall. We hear them on our rangings. Benjen Stark gave Jon a long look. Don't you usually eat at a table with your brothers? Most times, Jon answered in a hollow voice. But tonight Lady Stark thought it might give insult to the royal family to seat a bastard among them. I see. His uncle glanced over at the raised table. My brother does not seem very festive tonight. Jon picked up on that too. Bastards always have. They needed to see through the smiles. Lord Eddard was the perfect host tonight, but in every one of his moves, there was tension Jon rarely seen before. When left alone, Lord Eddard seemed distracted. The king was drinking all night, his face red under his black beard. Toast followed toast, and King Robert was in a good mood, but his wife, the Queen, sat behind him cold as an ice sculpture. The Queen is angry too, Jon said in a low, quiet voice. Father took the king down to the crypts this afternoon. The Queen didn't want him to go. Benjen gave Jon a measuring look. You don't miss much, do you, Jon? We could use a man like you on the wall. Jon drew himself up proudly. Robb is a stronger lance than I am, but I'm a better sword, and Hullen says I sit a horse as well as anyone in the castle. Notable achievements. Take me with you when you go back to the wall, Jon said in a sudden rush. Father will give you leave if you ask him. I know he will. Uncle Benjen studied his face carefully. The wall is a hard place for a boy, Jon. I am almost a man grown, Jon objected. I will turn 15 on my next name day, and Maester Lewin says bastards grow up faster than other children. That's true enough, Benjen said with a frown. He took Jon's cup from the table, refilled it, and drank down a long swallow. Daeron Targaryen was only 14 when he conquered Dorne, Jon said. He admired the young dragon. A conquest that lasted a summer, his uncle pointed out. Your boy king lost 10,000 men taking the place, and another 50 trying to hold it. Someone should have told him that war isn't a game. He took another sip of wine. Also, he said, wiping his mouth, Daeron Targaryen was only 18 when he died, or have you forgotten that part? I forget nothing, Jon boasted. The wine was talking now. Jon sat very straight to make himself seem taller. I want to serve in the Night's Watch, uncle. Jon has been thinking about this for a long time, during nights when his brothers were sleeping around him. Robb would one day be Lord of Winterfell, with Bran and Rickon as his wards. Arya and Sansa would marry into great houses to have their own castles down south. But what path was open for a bastard like him? You don't know what you're asking, Jon. The Night's Watch is a sworn brotherhood. We have no families. None of us will ever father sons. Our wife is duty. Our mistress is honor. A bastard can have honor too, Jon said. I am ready to swear your oath. You are a boy of 14, Benjen said. Not a man. Not yet. Until you have known a woman, you cannot understand what you would be giving up. I don't care about that, Jon said hotly. You might if you knew what it meant, Benjen said. If you knew what the oath would cost you, you might be less eager to pay the price, son. I'm not your son, Jon said, anger rising. Benjen Stark stood up. More's the pity. He put a hand on Jon's shoulder. Come back to me after you fathered a few bastards of your own and we'll see how you feel. Jon trembled. I would never father a bastard, he said carefully. Never. He spat it out, like venom. Jon realized that silence was all around him. Everyone at their table was staring at him now. Tears filled his eyes as he stood up. I must be excused, he said, with the last of his dignity. Jon turned and hurried away before the men could see his tears. He understood that he had had too many cups of wine. He stumbled on his own feet while leaving the hall, collapsing with a serving girl sending flagons of summer wine flying. People laughed, and Jon felt his face reddening, hot. A hand tried to help him, but he tore himself away and ran for the door, with his direwolf following. The yard was deserted, save for a guard on the wall with his cloak pulled close around him against the cold. As miserable as he looked, Jon wished he could trade lives with the sentry. The castle looked empty, except for the Great Hall, so much that it reminded Jon of an abandoned fortress he once saw, standing silent and forgotten. But there was music here, pouring out of the open windows of the hall behind Jon. Song and music were the last things he wanted now. Wiping his tear-washed face on his shirt sleeve, he turned to leave the courtyard for someplace quieter. "Boy!" a voice called out to him. Jon turned. The dwarf, Tyrion Lannister, was sitting on the ledge above the door, reminding Jon of a gargoyle. He was grinning. "Is that animal a wolf?" "A direwolf," Jon said. "His name is Ghost." He stared up at the little man, his disappointment forgotten for now. "What are you doing up there? Why aren't you at the feast?" "Too hot, too noisy, and I drunk too much wine," the dwarf replied. "I learned long ago that it is considered rude to vomit on your brother. Might I have a closer look at your wolf?" Jon hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Can you climb down, or shall I bring you a ladder?" "Oh, bleed that," the little man said. He pushed himself off the ledge and, followed by Jon's awed gaze, curled up into a little ball in the air, then landed on his feet. He jumped back onto his feet with ease. Ghost backed away carefully, and Tyrion Lannister laughed as he dusted himself off. "I believe I frightened your wolf. My apologies." "He's not scared," Jon said. He knelt and called out, "Ghost, come here. Come on, that's it." The puppy obeyed, getting closer on tiny paws, but was eyeing the dwarf uncertainly as he nuzzled Jon's hand. Tyrion tried to pet him, but Ghost bared his fangs silently, and the dwarf snatched his hand away in alarm. "Shy, isn't he?" Lannister noted. "Sit, Ghost," Jon commanded. "That's it, keep still." He looked up at the dwarf. "You can touch him now. He won't move until I tell him to. I've been training him." "I see," Lannister said. He ruffled the snow-white fur between Ghost's ears and said, "Nice wolf." "If I wasn't here, he'd tear out your throat," Jon said. He knew that was probably not true. Not yet, but it would be one day. "In that case, you had best stay close," the dwarf said. He cocked his large head to one side and looked Jon over with his mismatched eyes. "I am Tyrion Lannister." "I know," Jon said. He got to his feet, standing. He was taller than the dwarf. It was an odd feeling. "You're Ned Stark's bastard, aren't you?" The word stabbed him like a cold dagger. His mouth twisted in distaste and said nothing. "Did I offend you?" Tyrion said. "Sorry, dwarfs don't have to be tactful. Generations of capering fools in motley have won me the right to dress badly and say any damn thing that comes to my mind," he grinned. "You are the bastard, though." "Lord Eddard Stark is my father," Jon said rigidly. Tyrion examined his face. "Yes," he said, "I can see it. You have more of the North in you than your brothers." "Half-brothers," Jon corrected. He found the dwarf's comment pleasing, but tried not to show it. "Let me give you some counsel, bastard," Lannister said. "Never forget what you are, for surely the world will not. Make it your strength. Then it can never be your weakness. Armor yourself in it, and it will never be used to hurt you." Jon did not ask, nor felt like listening to a stranger's advice. "What do you know about being a bastard?" "All dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes." "You are your mother's true-born son of Lannister." "Am I?" the dwarf replied mockingly. "Do tell my lord father. My mother died birthing me, and he's never been sure." "I don't even know who my mother was," Jon said. "Some woman, no doubt. Most of them are." He gave Jon a grim grin. "Remember this, boy. All dwarfs may be bastards, yet not all bastards need be dwarfs." With that, the dwarf turned his back on Jon and walked away, back to the Great Hall, whistling cheerfully. As the door opened, the light threw his shadow across the whole yard. Tyrion Lannister stood tall as a king, if only just for a moment. And this is where Jon I ends. So why did Maester Luwin lie? In the next chapter, Catelyn II, Ned and Catelyn are discussing what to do with Jon when Ned travels south with Robert. Catelyn refuses to house Jon, but Ned can't take Jon with him to court. They are at a crossroad. But then Luwin interjects with this. "Another solution presents itself," he said, his voice quiet. "Your brother Benjen came to me about Jon a few days ago. It seems the boy aspires to take the Black." Ned looked shocked. He asked to join the Night's Watch? However, as we know, Benjen does not want Jon to join the Night's Watch so young, and Luwin exploits his position to have Jon sent to the wall. For this video series, we'll be pointing out all the times that the Maesters directly or indirectly influence the story, in an effort to prove Maesters sometimes have their own agendas. This will be important later in future theory predictions. Moreover, there is a theory that Benjen was forced to take the Black because he kept something secret from Ned pertaining to Lyanna running away with Rhaegar during Robert's rebellion. Since it's strange for Ned's only remaining brother to be left at the wall, even though there are plenty of better futures he could have chosen from. But again, this is just pure speculation. Although we never see Ned and Benjen interact even once in a Game of Thrones, which could be interpreted that the brothers do not get along despite both being pretty honorable guys. Here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. The description of the feast is from Jon's POV, thus it focuses on his conversations with Benjen. The scenes depicting the activities of other people in the feast are mostly not present in the book. These include Robert's activities and Cersei's reactions, conversations between Catelyn and Cersei, conversations between Benjen and Eddard, the subtle confrontation between Jaime and Eddard, Sansa speaking to Cersei, and Arya throwing food at Sansa. And that's about it for this chapter. Catelyn II. Of all the rooms in Winterfell's Great Keep, Catelyn's bedchambers were the hottest. She seldom had to light a fire. The castle had been built over natural hot springs, and the scalding waters rushed through its walls and chambers like blood through a man's body, driving the chill from the stone halls, filling the glass gardens with a moist warmth, keeping the earth from freezing. Open pools smoked day and night in a dozen small courtyards. That was a little thing in summer. In winter, it was the difference between life and death. Catelyn's bath was always hot and steaming, and her walls warm to the touch. The warmth reminded her of Riverrun, of days in the sun with Lysa and Edmure, but Ned could never abide the heat. The Starks were made for the cold, he would tell her, and she would laugh and tell him in that case they had certainly built their castle in the wrong place. So when they had finished, Ned rolled off and climbed from her bed, as he had 1,000 times before. He crossed the room, pulled back the heavy tapestries, and threw open the high narrow windows one by one, letting the night air into the chamber. The wind swirled around him as he stood facing the dark, naked and empty-handed. Catelyn pulled the furs to her chin and watched him. He looked somehow smaller and more vulnerable, like the youth she had wed in the Sept at Riverrun, 15 long years gone. Her loins still ached from the urgency of his lovemaking. It was a good ache. She could feel his seed within him. She prayed that it might quicken there. It had been 3 years since Rickon. She was not too old. She could give him another son. "I will refuse him," Ned said as he turned back to her. His eyes were haunted, his voice thick with doubt. Catelyn sat up in the bed. "You cannot. You must not. My duties are here in the north. I have no wish to be Robert's hand." "He will not understand that. He is a king now, and kings are not like other men. If you refuse to serve him, he will wonder why, and sooner or later he will begin to suspect that you oppose him. Can't you see the danger that would put us in?" Ned shook his head, refusing to believe. "Robert would never harm me or any of mine. We were closer than brothers. He loves me. If I refuse him, he will roar and curse and bluster, and in a week we will laugh about it together. I know the man." "You knew the man," she said. "The king is a stranger to you." Catelyn remembered the direwolf dead in the snow, the broken antler lodged deep in her throat. She had to make him see. "Pride is everything to a king, my lord. Robert came all this way to see you, to bring you these great honors. You cannot throw them back in his face." "Honors," Ned laughed bitterly. "In his eyes, yes," she said. "And in yours?" "And in mine," she blazed, angry now. Why couldn't he see? He offers his own son in marriage to our daughter. What else would you call that? Sansa might someday be queen. Her sons could rule from the Wall to the Mountains of Dawn. What is so wrong with that? "Gods, Catelyn, Sansa is only 11, Ned said. "And Joffrey is," she finished for him, "crown prince and heir to the Iron Throne. And I was only 12 when my father promised me to your brother Brandon." That brought a bitter twist to Ned's mouth. Brandon, yes. Brandon would know what to do. He always did. It was all meant for Brandon. You, Winterfell, everything. He was born to be a king's hand and a father to queens. I never asked for his cup to pass to me. "Perhaps not," Catelyn said. "But Brandon is dead and the cup has passed, and you must drink from it, like it or not." Ned turned away from her, back to the night. He stood staring out in the darkness, watching the moon and the stars perhaps, or perhaps the sentries on the wall. Catelyn softened then to see his pain. Eddard Stark had married her in Brandon's place, as custom decreed, but the shadow of his dead brother still lay between them, as did the other, the shadow of the woman he would not name, the woman who had borne him his bastard son. She was about to go to him when the knock came at the door, loud and unexpected. Ned turned, frowning. "What is it?" Desmond's voice came through the door. "My lord, Maester Luwin is without and begs urgent audience." "You told him I had left orders not to be disturbed?" "Yes, my lord, he insists." "Very well, send him in." Ned crossed to the wardrobe and slipped on a heavy robe. Catelyn realized suddenly how cold it had become. She sat up in bed and pulled the furs to her chin. "Perhaps we should close the window," she suggested. Ned nodded absently. Maester Luwin was shown in. The Maester was a small grey man. His eyes were grey and quick, and saw much. His hair was grey, what little the years had left him. His robe was grey wool, trimmed with white fur, the Stark colours. Its great floppy sleeves had pockets hidden inside. Luwin was always tucking things into those sleeves and producing other things from them. Books, messages, strange artifacts, toys for the children. With all he kept hidden in his sleeves, Catelyn was surprised that Maester Luwin could lift his arms at all. The Maester waited until the door had closed behind him before he spoke. "My lord," he said to Ned, "pardon for disturbing your rest. I have been left a message." Ned looked irritated. "Been left? By whom? Has there been a rider? I was not told." "There was no rider, my lord. Only a carved wooden box left on a table in my observatory while I napped. My servant saw no one, but it must have been brought by someone in the king's party. We have had no other visitors from the south." "A wooden box, you say?" Catelyn said. "Inside was a fine new lens for the observatory, from Mia by the look of it. The lens crafter of Mia are without equal." Ned frowned. He had little patience for this sort of thing, Catelyn knew. "A lens," he said. "What has this to do with me?" "I asked the same question," Maester Luwin said. "Clearly there was more to this than the seeming." Under the heavy weight of her furs, Catelyn shivered. "A lens is an instrument to help us see." "Indeed it is." He fingered the collar of his order, a heavy chain worn tight around the neck beneath his robe, each link forged from a different metal. Catelyn could feel dread stirring inside her once again. What is it that they would have us see more clearly? The very thing I asked myself. Maester Lewin drew a tightly rolled paper out of his sleeve. I found the true message concealed within a false bottom when I dismantled the box the lens had come in, but it is not for my eyes. Ned held out his hand. Let me have it then. Lewin did not stir. Pardons, my lord. The message is not for you either. It is marked for the eyes of the Lady Catelyn, and her alone. May I approach? Catelyn nodded, not trusting to speak. The maester placed the paper on the table beside the bed. It was sealed with a small blob of blue wax. Lewin bowed and began to retreat. Stay, Ned commanded him. His voice was grave. He looked at Catelyn. What is it? My lady, you're shaking. I'm afraid, she admitted. She reached out and took the letter in trembling hands. The furs dropped away from her nakedness, forgotten. In the blue wax was the moon and falcon seal of House Arryn. It's from Lysa. Catelyn looked at her husband. It will not make us glad, she told him. There is grief in this message, Ned. I can feel it. Ned frowned, his face darkening. Open it. Catelyn broke the seal. Her eyes moved over the words. At first they made no sense to her. Then she remembered. Lysa took no chances. When we were girls together, we had a private language, she and I. Can you read it? Yes, Catelyn admitted. Then tell us. Perhaps I should withdraw, Maester Lewin said. No, Catelyn said. We will need your counsel. She threw back the furs and climbed from the bed. The night air was as cold as the grave on her bare skin as she padded across the room. Maester Lewin averted his eyes. Even Ned looked shocked. What are you doing? He asked. Lighting a fire, Catelyn told him. She found a dressing gown and shrugged into it, then knelt over the cold hearth. Maester Lewin, Ned began. Maester Lewin has delivered all my children, Catelyn said. This is no time for false modesty. She slid the paper in among the kindling and placed the heavier logs on top of it. Ned crossed the room, took her by the arm and pulled her to her feet. He held her there, his face inches from hers. My lady, tell me, what was in this message? Catelyn stiffened in his grasp. A warning, she said softly, if we have the wits to hear. His eyes searched her face. Go on. Lysa says Jon Arryn was murdered. His fingers tightened on her arm. By whom? The Lannisters, she told him. The Queen. Ned released his hold on her arm. There were deep red marks on her skin. Gods, he whispered. His voice was hoarse. Your sister is sick with grief. She cannot know what she is saying. She knows, Catelyn said. Lysa is impulsive, yes, but this message was carefully planned, cleverly hidden. She knew it meant death if her letter fell into the wrong hands. To risk so much, she must have had more than mere suspicion. Catelyn looked to her husband. Now we truly have no choice. You must be Robert's hand. You must go south with him and learn the truth. She saw at once that Ned had reached a very different conclusion. The only truths I know are here. The south is a nest of adders I would do better to avoid. Lewin plucked at his chin collar where it had chafed the soft skin of his throat. The hand of the king has great power, my lord. Power to find the truth of Lord Arryn's death, to bring his killers to the king's justice. Power to protect Lady Arryn and her son, if the worst be true. Ned glanced helplessly around the bedchamber. Catelyn's heart went out to him, but she knew she could not take him in her arms just then. First the victory must be won, for her children's sake. You say you love Robert like a brother. Would you leave your brother surrounded by Lannisters? The others take both of you, Ned muttered darkly. He turned away from them and went to the window. She did not speak, nor did the maester. They waited, quiet, while Eddard Stark said a silent farewell to the home he loved. When he turned away from the window at last, his voice was tired and full of melancholy, and moisture glittered faintly in the corners of his eyes. My father went south once, to answer the summons of a king. He never came home again. A different time, Maester Lewin said. A different king. Yes, Ned said dully. He seated himself in a chair by the hearth. Catelyn, you shall stay here in Winterfell. His words were like an icy draught through her heart. No, she said, suddenly afraid. Was this to be her punishment? Never to see his face again, nor to feel his arms around her? Yes, Ned said, in words that would brook no argument. You must govern the North in my stead, while I run Robert's errands. There must always be a Stark in Winterfell. Robb is 14. Soon enough, he will be a man grown. He must learn to rule, and I will not be here for him. Make him part of your councils. He must be ready when his time comes. God's will, not for many years, Maester Luwin muttered. Maester Luwin, I trust you as I would my own blood. Give my wife your voice in all things great and small. Teach my son the things he needs to know. Winter is coming. Maester Luwin nodded gravely. Then silence fell, until Catelyn found the courage and asked the question whose answer she dreaded most. What of the other children? Ned stood and took her in his arms, and held her face close to his. Rickon is very young, he said gently. He should stay here with you and Robb. The others I would take with me. I could not bear it, Catelyn said, trembling. You must, he said. Sansa must wed Joffrey. That is clear now. We must give them no grounds to suspect our devotion, and it is past time that Arya learnt the ways of the southern court. In a few years, she would be of an age to marry too. Sansa would shine in the south, Catelyn thought to herself, and the gods knew that Arya needed refinement. Reluctantly, she let go of them in her heart. But not Bran. Never Bran. Yes, she said, but please, Ned, for the love you bear me, let Bran remain here at Winterfell. He is only 7. I was 8 when my father sent me to foster at the Eyrie, Ned said. So Roderick tells me there is a bad feeling between Robb and Prince Joffrey. That is not healthy. Bran can bridge that distance. He is a sweet boy, quick to laugh, easy to love. Let them grow up with the young princes. Let them become their friend as Robert became mine. Our house will be the safer for it. He was right. Catelyn knew it. It did not make the pain any easier to bear. She would lose all 4 of them. Then Ned and both girls and her sweet loving Bran. Only Robb and little Rickon would be left to her. She felt lonely already. Winterfell was such a vast place. Keep him off the walls then, she said bravely. You know how Bran loves to climb. Ned kissed the tears from her eyes before they could fall. Thank you, my lady, he whispered. This is hard, I know. What of Jon Snow, my lord? Maester Luwin asked. Catelyn tensed at the mention of the name. Ned felt the anger in her and pulled away. Many men fathered bastards. Catelyn had grown up with that knowledge. It came as no surprise to her in the first year of her marriage to learn that Ned had fathered a child on some girl chance met on campaign. He had a man's needs after all, and they had spent that year apart. Ned off at war in the south, while she remained safe in her father's castle at Riverrun. Her thoughts were more of Robb, the infant at her breast, than of the husband she barely knew. He was welcome to whatever solace he might find between battles, and if his seed quickened, she expected he would see to the child's needs. He did more than that. The Starks were not like other men. Ned brought his bastard home with him and called him son for all the North to see. When the wars were over at last and Catelyn rode to Winterfell, Jon and his wet nurse had already taken up residence. That cut deep. Ned would not speak of the mother, not so much as a word, but a castle has no secrets, and Catelyn heard her maids repeating tales they heard from the lips of her husband's soldiers. They whispered of Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, deadliest of the 7 knights of Aerys Kingsguard, and of how their young lord had slain him in single combat. And they told how afterward Ned had carried Sir Arthur's sword back to the beautiful young sister who awaited him in a castle called Starfall on the shores of the summer sea, the Lady Ashara Dane, tall and fair, with haunting violet eyes. It had taken her a fortnight to marshal her courage, but finally, in bed one night, Catelyn had asked her husband the truth of it, asked him face to face. That was the only time in all their years that Ned had ever frightened her. "Never ask me about Jon," he said, cold as ice. "He is my blood, and that is all you need to know. And now I will learn where you heard that name, my lady." She had pledged to obey, she told him, and from that day on, the whispering had stopped, and Ashara's Dane name was never heard in Winterfell again. Whoever's Jon mother had been, Ned must have loved her fiercely, for nothing Catelyn said would persuade him to send the boy away. It was the one thing she could never forgive him. She had come to love her husband with all her heart, but she had never found it in her to love Jon. She might have overlooked a dozen bastards for Ned's sake, so long as they were out of sight. Jon was never out of sight, and as he grew, he looked more like Ned than any of the true-born sons she bore him. Somehow, that made it worse. "Jon must go," she said now. "He and Robb are close," Ned said. "I had hoped—" "He cannot stay here," Catelyn said, cutting him off. "He is your son, not mine. I will not have him." It was hard, she knew, but no less the truth. Ned would do the boy no kindness by leaving him here at Winterfell. The look Ned gave her was anguished. "You know I cannot take him south. There will be no place for him at court. A boy with a bastard's name. You know what they will say of him. He will be shunned." Catelyn armored her heart against the mute appeal in her husband's eye. "They say your friend Robert has fathered a dozen bastards himself, and none of them has ever been seen at court," Ned blazed. "The Lannister woman has seen to that. How can you be so damnably cruel, Catelyn? He is only a boy." His fury was on him. He might have said more, and worse, but Maester Luwin cut in. "Another solution presents itself," he said, his voice quiet. "Your brother Benjen came to me about Jon a few days ago. It seems the boy aspires to take the Black." Ned looked shocked. "He asked to join the Night's Watch?" Catelyn said nothing. Let Ned work it out in his own mind. Her voice would not be welcome now, yet gladly would she have kissed the Maester just then. His was the perfect solution. Benjen Stark was a sworn brother. Jon would be a son to him, the child he would never have, and in time the boy would take the oath as well. He would father no sons who might someday contest with Catelyn's own grandchildren for Winterfell. Maester Luwin said, "There is great honor in service on the wall, my lord, and even a bastard may rise high in the Night's Watch," Ned reflected. Still, his voice was troubled. "Jon is so young. If he asked this when he was a man grown, that would be one thing. But a boy of 14... "A hard sacrifice," Maester Luwin agreed. "Yet these are hard times, my lord. His road is no crueler than yours or your lady's." Catelyn thought of the 3 children she must lose. It was not easy keeping silent then. Ned turned away from them to gaze out the window, his long face silent and thoughtful. Finally, he sighed and turned back. "Very well," he said to Maester Luwin. "I suppose it is for the best. I will speak to Ben." "When shall we tell Jon?" the Maester asked. "When I must. Preparations must be made. It'll be a fortnight before we are ready to depart. I would sooner let Jon enjoy these last few days. Summer will end soon enough, and childhood as well. When the time comes, I will tell him myself." So it would have been extremely difficult for Lysa in the Eyrie to have sent the letter, leaving only Littlefinger to orchestrate its arrival in Maester Luwin's observatory. Lysa is also too impulsive to come up with such a careful delivery method, and the letter only serves to make sure that Eddard has no choice but to accept Robert's offer to become Hand of the King, and this is what makes A Song of Ice and Fire so great. The mystery that starts it all, the death of Jon Arryn, can be figured out in the first book alone through the contradicting reports around Robert Arryn's fostering. You can also kind of see how it all played out. Lysa found out that her son was going to be taken away from her, and so Peter convinces her to kill Jon Arryn and run away with Robin back to the Eyrie and help bring Eddard Stark to King's Landing. It's also a crime how wasted Littlefinger was in the show, when everything he does in the book is so meticulous and chaotic that you're never sure if he planned it or just got really lucky. Either way, Littlefinger is someone to watch out for in the next book. This chapter is also a real testament to how George R.R. Martin creates difficult but fair mysteries where the reader has the chance to figure out the answers by carefully examining the text and looking for inconsistencies that don't make sense. Here are some of the other differences between the HBO TV show and book. In the book, when Maester Luwin goes into Eddard's bedroom with the letter about Jon Arryn's murder, Catelyn is naked. She even gets out of bed naked, remarking that it does not matter as Luwin delivered all of her children. In the show, she's dressed in a sleeping gown, and Lysa Arryn's letter isn't coded. Also, the letter is delivered by a messenger. In the book, it is coded, found in a box with a false bottom, and was left in Luwin's observatory by an unknown party. In the book, Ned does not wish to become King Robert's hand, but Catelyn persuades him to, especially after Lysa's letter. But in the show, the letter makes Catelyn afraid for her husband and begs him not to accept. So the letter has the opposite effect. In the book, Eddard plans to take Bran to King's Landing before he is injured. There is no mention of this in the show. And that's it for this chapter. Arya I. Arya's stitches were crooked again. She frowned down at them with dismay and glanced over to where her sister Sansa sat among the other girls. Sansa's needlework was exquisite. Everyone said so. Sansa's work is as pretty as she is, Septa Mordane told their Lady Mother once. She has such fine, delicate hands. When Lady Catelyn had asked about Arya, the Septa had sniffed. Arya has the hands of a blacksmith. Arya glanced furtively across the room, worried that Septa Mordane might have read her thoughts. But the Septa was paying her no attention today. She was sitting with the Princess Marcilla, all smiles and admiration. It was not often that the Septa was privileged to instruct a royal princess in the womanly arts, as she had when the Queen brought Marcilla to join them. Arya thought that Marcella's stitches looked a little crooked too, but you would never know it from the way Septa Mordane was cooing. She studied her own work again, looking for some way to salvage it, then sighed and put down the needle. She looked glumly at her sister. Sansa was chatting away happily as she worked. Beth Castle, Sir Roderick's little girl, was sitting by her feet, listening to every word she said, and Jean Poole was leaning over to whisper something in her ear. "What are you talking about?" Arya asked suddenly. Jean gave her a startled look, then giggled. Sansa looked abashed. Beth blushed. No one answered. "Tell me," Arya said. Jean glanced over to make certain that Septa Mordane was not listening. Marcella said something then, and the Septa laughed along with the rest of the ladies. "We were talking about the prince," Sansa said, her voice soft as a kiss. Arya knew which prince she meant. Joffrey, of course. The tall, handsome one. Sansa got to sit with him at the feast. Arya had to sit with the little fat one, naturally. "Joffrey likes your sister," Jean whispered, proud as if she had something to do with it. She was the daughter of Winterfell Stewart and Sansa's dearest friend. He told her she was very beautiful. "He's going to marry her," little Beth said dreamily, hugging herself. "Then Sansa will be queen of all the realm." Sansa had the grace to blush. She brushed prettily. She did everything prettily, Arya thought with dull resentment. "Beth, you shouldn't make up stories," Sansa corrected the younger girl, gently stroking her hair to take the harshness out of her words. She looked at Arya. "What did you think of Prince Joff, sister? He's very gallant, don't you think?" "Jon says he looks like a girl," Arya said. Sansa sighed as she stitched. "Poor Jon," she said. "He gets jealous because he's a bastard." "He's our brother," Arya said, much too loudly. Her voice cut through the afternoon quiet of the tower room. Septa Mordane raised her eyes. She had a bony face, sharp eyes, and a thin lipless mouth made for frowning. It was frowning now. "What are you talking about, children?" "Our half-brother," Sansa corrected, soft and precise. She smiled for the scepter. "Arya and I were remarking on how pleased we were to have the princess with us today," she said. Septa Mordane nodded. "Indeed, a great honor for us all." Princess Marcilla smiled uncertainly at the compliment. "Arya, why aren't you at work?" the scepter asked. She rose to her feet, starched skirts rustling as she started across the room. "Let me see your stitches." Arya wanted to scream. It was just like Sansa to go and attract the scepter's attention. "Here," she said, surrendering up her work. The scepter examined the fabric. "Arya, Arya, Arya," she said. "This will not do. This will not do at all." Everyone was looking at her. It was too much. Sansa was too well bred to smile at her sister's disgrace, but Jean was smirking on her behalf. Even Princess Marcella looked sorry for her. Arya felt tears filling her eyes. She pushed herself out of her chair and bolted for the door. Septa Mordane called after her. "Arya, come back here. Don't you take another step. Your lady mother will hear of this. In front of our royal princess too. You'll shame us all." Arya stopped at the door and turned back, biting her lip. The tears were running down her cheeks now. She managed a stiff little bow to Marcilla. "By your leave, my lady." Marcilla blinked at her and looked to her ladies for guidance. But if she was uncertain, Septa Mordane was not. "Just where do you think you are going, Arya?" the scepter demanded. Arya glared at her. "I have to go shoe a horse," she said sweetly, taking a brief satisfaction in the shock on the scepter's face. Then she whirled and made her exit, running down the steps as fast as her feet would take her. It wasn't fair. Sansa had everything. Sansa was 2 years older. Maybe by the time Arya had been born, there had been nothing left. Often it felt that way. Sansa could sew and dance and sing. She wrote poetry. She knew how to dress. She played the high harp and the bells. Worse, she was beautiful. Sansa had gotten her mother's fine high cheekbones and the thick auburn hair of the Tullys. Arya took after their lord father. Her hair was a lustrous brown and her face was long and solemn. Jean used to call her Arya Horseface and neigh whenever she came near. It hurt that the one thing Arya could do better than her sister was ride a horse. Well, that and manage a household. Sansa had never had much of a head for figures. If she did marry Prince Joff, Arya hoped for his sake that he had a good steward. Nymeria was waiting for her in the guardroom at the base of the stairs. She bounded to her feet as soon as she caught sight of Arya. Arya grinned. The wolf pup loved her, even if no one else did. They went everywhere together, and Nymeria slept in her room at the foot of her bed. If Mother had not forbidden it, Arya would gladly have taken the wolf with her to needlework. Let Septa Mordane complain about her stitches then. Nymeria nipped eagerly at her hand as Arya untied her. She had yellow eyes. When they caught the sunlight, they gleamed like 2 golden coins. Arya had named her after the warrior queen of the Rhoyne, who had led her people across the narrow sea. That had been a great scandal too. Sansa, of course, had named her pup Lady. Arya made a face and hugged the wolfling tight. Nymeria licked her ear and she giggled. By now, Septa Mordane would certainly have sent word to her lady mother. If she went to her room, they would find her. Arya did not care to be found. She had a better notion. The boys were at practice in the yard. She wanted to see Robb put gallant Prince Joffrey flat on his back. "Come," she whispered to Nymeria. She got up and ran, the wolf coming hard at her heels. There was a window in the covered bridge between the armory and the great keep, where you had a view of the whole yard. That was where they headed. They arrived, flush and breathless, to find Jon seated on the sill, one leg drawn up languidly to his chin. He was watching the action, so absorbed that he seemed unaware of her approach until his white wolf moved to meet them. Nymeria stalked closer on wary feet. Ghost, already larger than his little mates, smelled her, gave her ear a careful nip, and settled back down. Jon gave her a curious look. "Shouldn't you be working on your stitches, little sister?" Arya made a face at him. "I wanted to see them fight." He smiled. "Come here then." Arya climbed up on the window and sat beside him, to a chorus of thuds and grunts from the yard below. To her disappointment, it was the younger boys drilling. Bran was so heavily padded he looked as though he had belted on a featherbed. And Prince Tommen, who was plump to begin with, seemed positively round. They were huffing and puffing and hitting at each other with padded wooden swords under the watchful eye of old Sir Roderick Castle, the Master-at-Arms, a great stout keg of a man with magnificent white cheek whiskers. A dozen spectators, man and boy, were calling out encouragement, Rob's voice the loudest among them. She spotted Theon Greyjoy beside him, his black doublet emblazoned with the golden kraken of his house, a look of wry contempt on his face. Both the combatants were staggering. Arya judged that they had been at it a while. "A shade more exhausting than needlework," Jon observed. "A shade more fun than needlework," Arya gave back at him. Jon grinned, reached over, and messed up her hair. Arya flushed. They had always been close. Jon had their father's face as she did. They were the only ones. Robb and Sansa and Bran and even little Rickon all took after the Tullys, with easy smiles and fire in their hair. When Arya had been little, she had been afraid that meant that she was a bastard too. It had been Jon she had gone to in her fear, and Jon who had reassured her. "Why aren't you down in the yard?" Arya asked him. He gave her a half smile. "Bastards are not allowed to damage young princes," he said. "Any bruise they take in the practice yard must come from true-born swords." Arya felt abashed. She should have realized. For the second time today, Arya reflected that life was not fair. She watched her little brother whack at Tommen. "I could do just as good as Bran," she said. "He's only 7. I'm 9. Jon looked her over with all his 14-year-old wisdom. "You're too skinny," he said. He took her arm to feel her muscle. Then he sighed and shook his head. "I doubt you could even lift a long sword, little sister, never mind swing one." Arya snatched back her arm and glared at him. Jon messed up her hair again. They watched Bran and Tommen circle each other. "You see Prince Joffrey?" Jon asked. She hadn't, not at first glance, but when she looked again, she found him to the back, under the shade of the high stone wall. He was surrounded by men she did not recognize, young squires in the livery of Lannister and Baratheon, strangers all. There were a few older men among them, knights she surmised. "Look at the arms on his surcoat," Jon suggested. Arya looked. An ornate shield had been embroidered on the prince's padded surcoat. No doubt the needlework was exquisite. The arms were divided down the middle. On one side was the crowned stag of the royal house, on the other the lion of Lannister. "The Lannisters are proud," Jon observed. "You'd think the royal sigil would be sufficient, but no, he makes his mother's house equal in honor to the king's." "The woman is important too," Arya protested. Jon chuckled. "Perhaps you should do the same thing, little sister. Wed Tully to Stark in your arms." A wolf with a fish in its mouth? It made her laugh. That would look silly. Besides, if a girl can't fight, why should she have a coat of arms? Jon shrugged. "Girls get the arms, but not the swords. Bastards get the swords, but not the arms. I do not make the rules, little sister." There was a shout from the courtyard below. Prince Tommen was rolling in the dust, trying to get up, and failing. All the padding made him look like a turtle on its back. Bran was standing over him with upraised wooden sword, ready to whack him once again when he regained his feet. The men began to laugh. "Enough!" Sir Roderick called out. He gave the prince a hand and yanked him back to his feet. "Well fought. Lou, Donis, help them out of their armor." He looked around. "Prince Joffrey, Robb, will you have another round?" Robb, already sweaty from a previous bout, moved forward eagerly. "Gladly." Joffrey moved into the sunlight in response to Roderick's summons. His hair shone like spun gold. He looked bored. This is a game for children, Sir Roderick. Theon Greyjoy gave a sudden bark of laughter. You are children, he said derisively. Robb may be a child, Joffrey said. I am a prince, and I grow tired of swatting at Starks with a play sword. You got more swats than you gave, Joff, Robb said. Are you afraid? Prince Joffrey looked at him. Oh, terrified, he said. You're so much older. Some of the Lannister men laughed. Jon looked down on the scene with a frown. Joffrey is truly a little shit, he told Arya. Sir Roderick tugged thoughtfully at his white whiskers. What are you suggesting? He asked the prince. Live steel. Done, Robb shot back. You'll be sorry. The Master-at-Arms put a hand on Robb's shoulder to quiet him. Live steel is too dangerous. I will permit you tawny swords with blunted edges. Joffrey said nothing, but a man strange to Arya, a tall knight with black hair and burned scars on his face, pushed forward in front of the prince. This is your prince. Who are you to tell him he may not have an edge on his sword, sir? Master-at-Arms of Winterfell, Clegane, and you will do well not to forget it. Are you training women here? The burned man wanted to know. He was muscled like a bull. I am training knights, Sir Roderick said, pointedly. They will have steel when they are ready, when they are of an age. The burned man looked at Robb. How old are you, boy? 14, Robb said. I killed a man at 12. You can be sure it was not with a blunt sword. Arya could see Robb bristle. His pride was wounded. He turned on Sir Roderick. Let me do it. I can beat him. Beat him with a tawny blade then, Sir Roderick said. Joffrey shrugged. Come and see me when you're older, Stark, if you're not too old. There was laughter from the Lannister men. Robb's curses rang through the yard. Arya covered her mouth in shock. Theon Greyjoy seized Robb's arm to keep him away from the prince. Sir Roderick tugged at his whiskers in dismay. Joffrey framed a yawn and turned to his younger brother. Come, Tommen, he said. The hour of play is done. Leave the children to their frolics. That brought more laughter from the Lannisters, more curses from Robb. Sir Roderick's face was beet red with fury under the white of his whiskers. Theon kept Robb locked in an iron grip until the princes and their party were safely away. Jon watched them leave, and Arya watched Jon. His face had grown as still as the pool at the heart of the Godswood. Finally, he climbed down off the window. The show is done, he said. He bent to scratch Ghost behind the ears. The White Wolf rose and rubbed against him. You had best run back to your room, little sister. Septa Mordane will surely be lurking. The longer you hide, the sterner the penance. You'll be sowing all through winter. When the spring thaw comes, they will find your body with a needle still locked tight between your frozen fingers. Arya didn't think it was funny. I hate needlework, she said with passion. It's not fair. Nothing is fair, Jon said. He messed up her hair again and walked away from her, Ghost moving silently beside him. Nymeria started to follow too, then stopped and came back when she saw that Arya was not coming. Reluctantly, she turned in the other direction. It was worse than Jon had thought. It wasn't Septa Mordane waiting in her room. It was Septa Mordane and her mother. And this is where Arya 1 ends. Now, there really are no major conspiracies being foreshadowed in this chapter. However, this chapter might have been written as part of George's 13 chapters from his original outline, as described here in a letter to his bookseller in 1993. We'll only be mentioning the parts relevant to this chapter. Dear Ralph, here are the first 13 chapters of the high fantasy novel I promised you, which I'm calling A Game of Thrones. When completed, this will be the first volume in what I see as an epic trilogy with the overall title A Song of Ice and Fire. As you know, I don't outline my novels. I find that if I know exactly where a book is going, I lose all interest in writing it. I do, however, have some strong notions as to the overall structure of the story I'm telling, and the eventual fate of many of the principal characters in the drama. Roughly speaking, there are 3 major conflicts set in motion in the chapters enclosed. These will form the major plot threads of the trilogy, intertwining each other in what should be a complex but exciting narrative tapestry. Each of the conflicts presents a major threat to the peace of my imaginary realm, the Seven Kingdoms, and to the lives of my principal characters. The first threat grows from the enmity between the great houses of Lannister and Stark as it plays out in a cycle of plot, counterplot, ambition, murder, and revenge, with the Iron Throne of the Seven Kingdoms as the ultimate prize. This will form the backbone of the first volume of the trilogy, A Game of Thrones, while the Lion of Lannister and the Direwolf of Stark snarl and scrape. However, a second and greater threat takes shape across the Narrow Sea, where the Dothraki horse lords mass their barbarian hordes for a great invasion of the Seven Kingdoms, led by the fierce and beautiful Daenerys Stormborn, the last of the Targaryen Dragon Lords. The Dothraki invasion will be the central story of my second book, A Dance with Dragons. The greatest danger of all, however, comes from the north, from the icy waste beyond the wall, where half-forgotten demons out of legend, the inhuman others, raise cold legions of the undead and the neverborn and prepare to ride down on the winds of winter to extinguish everything that we would call life. The only thing that stands between the Seven Kingdoms and an endless night is the wall, and a handful of men in black called the Night's Watch. Their story will be in the heart of my third volume, The Winds of Winter. The final battle will also draw together characters and plot threads left from the first two books, and resolve all in one huge climax. The 13 chapters on hand should give you a notion as to my narrative strategy. All three books will feature a complex mosaic of intercutting points of view among various of my large and diverse cast of players. The cast will not always remain the same. Old characters will die and new ones will be introduced. Some of the fatalities will include sympathetic viewpoint characters. I want the reader to feel that no one is ever completely safe, not even the characters who seem to be the heroes. The suspense always ratchets up a notch when you know that any character can die at any time. 5 central characters will make it through all 3 volumes, however, growing from children to adults and changing the world and themselves in the process. In a sense, my trilogy is almost a generational saga, telling the life stories of these 5 characters, 3 men and 2 women. My 5 key players are Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and 3 of the children of Winterfell, Arya, Bran, and the bastard Jon Snow. All of them are introduced at some length in the chapters you have to hand. This is going to be, I hope, quite an epic. Epic in its scale, epic in its action, and epic in its length. I see all 3 volumes as big books, running about 700 to 800 manuscript pages, so things are just barely getting underway in the 13 chapters I have sent you. I have quite a clear notion of how the story is going to unfold in the first volume, A Game of Thrones. Things will get a lot worse for the poor Starks before they get better, I'm afraid. Lord Eddard Stark and his wife Catelyn Tully are both doomed, and will perish at the hands of their enemies. Ned will discover what happens to his friend Jon Arryn, but before he can act on his knowledge, King Robert will have an unfortunate accident and the throne will pass to his sullen and brutal son Joffrey, still a minor. Joffrey will not be sympathetic and Ned will be accused of treason, but before he is taken, he will help his wife and his daughter, Arya, escape back to Winterfell. Each of the contending families will learn it has a member of dubious loyalty in its midst. Sansa Stark, wed to Joffrey Baratheon, will bear him a son, the heir to the throne, and when the crunch comes, she will choose her husband and child over her parents and siblings, a choice she will later bitterly rue. Tyrion Lannister, meanwhile, will befriend both Sansa and her sister Arya while growing more and more disenchanted with his own family. Young Bran will come out of his coma after a strange prophetic dream, only to discover that he will never walk again. He will turn to magic, at first in the hope of restoring his legs, but later for its own sake. When his father Eddard Stark is executed, Bran will see the shape of doom descending on all of them, but nothing he can say will stop his brother Robb from calling the banners in rebellion. All the North will be inflamed by war. Robb will win several splendid victories and maim Joffrey Baratheon on the battlefield, but in the end he will not be able to stand against Jaime and Tyrion Lannister and their allies. Robb Stark will die in battle, and Tyrion Lannister will besiege and burn Winterfell. Jon Snow, the bastard, will remain in the far north. He will mature into a ranger of great daring, and ultimately will succeed his uncle as the commander of the Night's Watch. When Winterfell burns, Catelyn Stark will be forced to flee north with her son Bran and her daughter Arya. Wounded by Lannister riders, they will seek refuge at the Wall, but the men of the Night's Watch give up their families when they take the Black, and Jon and Benjen will not be able to help to Jon's anguish. It will lead to a bitter estrangement between Jon and Bran. Arya will be more forgiving until she realizes with terror that she has fallen in love with Jon, who is not only her half-brother, but a man of the Night's Watch, sworn to celibacy. Their passion will continue to torment Jon and Arya throughout the trilogy, until the secret of Jon's true parentage is finally revealed in the last book. Abandoned by the Night's Watch, Catelyn and her children will find their only hope of safety lies even further north, beyond the Wall, where they fall into the hands of Mance Rayder, the king beyond the Wall, and get a dreadful glimpse of the inhuman others as they attack the wildling encampment. Bran's magic, Arya's sword needle, and the savagery of their direwolves will help them survive, but their mother Catelyn will die at the hands of the others, which is kind of like her becoming Lady Stoneheart in A Feast for Crows. And back to this chapter. Arya not having any friends would lead her and Jon to becoming really close. Robb and Joffrey's enmity is also well set up in this chapter, and there are no differences between the HBO TV show and book because this chapter is almost entirely omitted from the show, except for a brief scene introducing the Stark family before the events of Bran I. However, ironically the show inversed the original outline with the White Walker threat coming first in the first 3 episodes of Season 8, while the last 3 episodes are dedicated to Daenerys' invasion of Westeros. That's it for this chapter. Daenerys II. Daenerys Targaryen wed Khal Drogo with fear and barbaric splendor in a field beyond the walls of Pentos, for the Dothraki believed that all things of importance in a man's life must be done beneath the open sky. Drogo had called his khalasar to attend him, and they had come. 40,000 Dothraki warriors, an uncounted number of women, children, and slaves. Outside the city walls, they camped with their vast herds, raising palaces of woven grass, eating everything in sight, and making the good folk of Pentos more anxious with every passing day. "My fellow magisters have double the size of the city guard," Illyroy told them over the platters of honey duck and orange snap peppers one night at the manse that had been Drogo's. The Khal had joined his khalasar, his estate given over to Daenerys and her brother until the wedding. "Best we get Princess Daenerys wedded quickly, before they hand half the wealth of Pentos away to sellswords and bravos," Ser Jorah Mormont jested. The exile had offered her brother his sword the night Dany had been sold to Khal Drogo. Viserys had accepted eagerly. Mormont had been their constant companion ever since. Magister Illyroy laughed lightly through his forked beard, but Viserys did not so much as smile. "He can have her tomorrow, if he likes," her brother said. He glanced over at Dany, and she lowered her eyes. "So long as he pays the price." Illyroy waved a languid hand in the air, rings glittering on his fat fingers. "I have told you, all is settled. Trust me, the Khal has promised you a crown, and you shall have it." "Yes, but when?" "When the Khal chooses," Illyroy said. "He will have the girl first, and after they are wed he must make his procession across the plains and present her to the Dosh Khaleen at Vaes Dothrak. After that, perhaps, if the omens favor war." Viserys seethed with impatience. "I piss on Dothraki omens. The usurper sits on my father's throne. How long must I wait?" Illyroy gave a massive shrug. "You have waited most of your life, great king. What is another few months? Another few years. Ser Jorah, who had travelled as far east as Vaes Dothrak, nodded in agreement. I counsel you to be patient, Your Grace. The Dothraki are true to their word, but they do things in their own time. A lesser man may beg a favour from the Khal, but must never presume to berate him. Viserys bristled. Guard your tongue, Mormont, or I'll have it out. I am no lesser man. I am the rightful lord of the Seven Kingdoms. The dragon does not beg. Ser Jorah lowered his eyes respectfully. Illyroy smiled enigmatically and tore a wing from the duck. Honey and grease ran over his fingers and dripped down into his beard as he nibbled at the tender meat. There are no more dragons, Dani thought, staring at her brother, though she did not dare say it aloud. Yet that night she dreamt of one. Viserys was hitting her, hurting her. She was naked, clumsy with fear. She ran from him, but her body seemed thick and ungainly. He struck her again. She stumbled and fell. You woke the dragon, he screamed. He screamed as he kicked her. You woke the dragon, you woke the dragon. Her thighs were slick with blood. She closed her eyes and whimpered. As if in answer, there was a hideous ripping sound and the crackling of some great fire. When she looked again, Viserys was gone. Great columns of flame rose all around, and in the midst of them was the dragon. It turned its great head slowly. When its molten eyes found hers, she woke, shaking and covered with a fine sheen of sweat. She had never been so afraid. Until the day of her wedding came at last. The ceremony began at dawn and continued until dusk, an endless day of drinking and feasting and fighting. A mighty earthen ramp had been raised amid the grass palaces, and there Dani was seated beside Khal Drogo, above the seething sea of Dothraki. She had never seen so many people in one place, nor people so strange and frightening. The horse lords might put on rich fabrics and sweet perfumes when they visited the free cities, but out under the open sky they kept the old ways. Men and women alike wore painted leather vests over bare chests and horsehair leggings cinched by bronze medallion belts, and the warriors greased their long braids with fat from the rendering pits. They gorged themselves on horse flesh roasted with honey and peppers, drank themselves blind on fermented mare's milk and Illyroy's fine wines, and spat jests at each other across the fire, their voices harsh and alien in Dani's ears. Viserys was seated just below her, splendid in a new black wool tunic with a scarlet dragon on the chest. Illyroy and Ser Jorah sat behind him. Theirs was a place of high honor, just below the Khal's own blood riders. But Dani could see the anger in her brother's lilac eyes. He did not like sitting beneath her, and he fumed when the slaves offered each dish first to the Khal and his bride and served him from the portions they refused. He could do nothing but nurse his resentment, so nurse it he did, his mood growing blacker by the hour at each insult to his person. Dani had never felt so alone as she did seated in the midst of that vast horde. Her brother had told her to smile, and so she smiled, until her face ached and the tears came unbidden to her eyes. She did her best to hide them, knowing how angry Viserys would be if he saw her crying, terrified of how Khal Drogo might react. Food was brought to her, steaming joints of meat and thick black sausages and Dothraki blood pies, and later fruits and sweetgrass stews, and delicate pastries from the kitchens of Pentos. But she waved it all away. Her stomach was a royal, and she knew she could keep none of it down. There was no one to talk to. Khal Drogo shouted commands and jested down to his blood riders, and laughed at their replies. But he scarcely glanced at Dani beside him. They had no common language. Dothraki was incomprehensible to her, and the Khal knew only a few words of the bastard Valyrian of the Free Cities, and none at all of the common tongue of the Seven Kingdoms. She would even have welcomed the conversation of Illyroy and her brother, but they were too far below her to hear. So she sat in her wedding silks, nursing a cup of honeyed wine, afraid to eat, talking silently to herself. "I am the blood of the dragon," she told herself. "I am Daenerys Stormborn, princess of Dragonstone, of the blood and seed of Aegon the Conqueror." The sun was only a quarter of the way up the sky when she saw her first man die. Drums were beating as some of the women danced for the cowl. Drogo watched without expression, but his eyes followed their movements, and from time to time he would toss down a bronze medallion for the women to fight over. The warriors were watching too. One of them finally stepped into the circle, grabbed a dancer by the arm, pushed her down to the ground, and mounted her right there, as a stallion mounts a mare. Illyroy had told her that might happen. The Dothraki mate like the animals in their herds. There is no privacy in a Khalasar, and they do not understand sin or shame as we do. Dani looked away from the coupling, frightened when she realized what was happening. But a second warrior stepped forward, and a third, and soon there was no way to avert her eyes. Then 2 men seized the same woman. She heard a shout, saw a shove, and in the blink of an eye, the araks were out. Long razor-sharp blades, half sword and half scythe. A dance of death began as the warriors circled and slashed, leaping toward each other, whirling the blades around their heads, shrieking insults at each clash. No one made a move to interfere. It ended as quickly as it began. The arak shivered together faster than Dani could follow. One man missed a step, the other swung his blade in a flat arc. Steel bit into flesh just above the Dothraki waist and opened him from backbone to belly button, spilling his entrails into the dust. As the loser died, the winner took hold of the nearest woman, not even the one they had been quarreling over, and had her there and then. Slaves carried off the body and the dancing resumed. Magister Illyroy had warned Dani about this too. A Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is deemed a dull affair, he had said. Her wedding must have been especially blessed. Before the day was over, a dozen men had died. As the hours passed, the terror grew in Dani until it was all she could do not to scream. She was afraid of the Dothraki, whose ways seemed alien and monstrous, as if they were beasts in human skins and not true men at all. She was afraid of her brother, of what he might do if she failed him. Most of all, she was afraid of what would happen tonight under the stars when her brother gave her up to the hulking giant who sat drinking beside her with a face as still and cruel as a bronze mask. "I am the blood of the dragon," she told herself again. When at last the sun was low in the sky, Khal Drogo clapped his hands together, and the drums and the shouting and feasting came to a sudden halt. Drogo stood and pulled Dani to her feet beside him. It was time for her bride gifts, and after the gifts, she knew, after the sun had gone down, it would be time for the first ride and the consummation of her marriage. Dani tried to put the thought aside, but it would not leave her. She hugged herself to try to keep from shaking. Her brother Viserys gifted her with 3 handmaids. Dani knew they had cost him nothing. Illyroy no doubt had provided the girls. Irri and Jiki were copper-skinned Dothraki with black-haired and almond-shaped eyes. Dora, a fair-haired, blue-eyed Lyseni girl. "These are no common servants, sweet sister," her brother told her as they were brought forward one by one. "Illyroy and I selected them personally for you. Irri will teach you riding, Jiki the Dothraki Tun, and Dora will instruct you in the womanly arts of love." He smiled thinly. "She's very good. Illyroy and I can both swear to that." Sir Jorah Mormont apologized for his gift. "It is a small thing, my princess, but all a poor exile could afford," he said as he laid a small stack of old books before her. They were histories and songs of the 7 kingdoms she saw, written in the common tongue. She thanked him with all her heart. Magister Illyroy murmured a command, and 4 burly slaves hurried forward, bearing between them a great cedar chest bound in bronze. When she opened it, she found piles of the finest velvets and damask the free cities could produce, and resting on top, nestled in the soft cloth, 3 huge eggs. Dani gasped. They were the most beautiful things she had ever seen, each different than the others, patterned in such rich colors that at first she thought they were crusted with jewels, and so large it took both of her hands to hold one. She lifted it delicately, expecting that it would be made of some fine porcelain or delicate enamel, or even blown glass. But it was much heavier than that, as if it were all of solid stone. The surface of the shell was covered with tiny scales, and as she turned the egg between her fingers, they shimmered like polished metal in the light of the setting sun. One egg was a deep green with burnished bronze flecks that came and went depending on how Dani turned it. Another was pale cream streaked with gold. The last was black as a midnight sea, yet alive with scarlet ripples and swirls. "What are they?" she asked, her voice hushed and full of wonder. "Dragon's eggs from the shadowlands beyond Ashai," said Magister Illyroy. "The eons have turned them to stone, yet they still burn bright with beauty. I shall treasure them always." Dani had heard tales of such eggs, but she had never seen one, nor thought to see one. It was a truly magnificent gift, though she knew that Illyroy could afford to be lavish. He had collected a fortune in horses and slaves for his part in selling her to Khal Drogo. The Khal's blood riders offered her the traditional 3 weapons, and splendid weapons they were. Hago gave her a great leather whip with a silver handle, Kolo a magnificent arak chased in gold, and Koltho a double-curved dragon bone bow taller than she was. Magister Illyroy and Ser Jorah had taught her the traditional refusals for these offerings. "This is a gift worthy of a great warrior. O blood of my blood, and I am but a woman. Let my lord husband bear these in my stead." And so Khal Drogo too received his bride gifts. Other gifts she was given in plenty by other Dothraki: slippers and jewels and silver rings for her hair, medallion belts and painted vests and soft furs, sand silks and jars of scent, needles and feathers, and tiny bottles of purple glass, and a gown made from the skin of 1,000 mice. "A handsome gift, Khaleesi," Magister Illyroy said of the last, after he had told her what it was. "Most lucky." The gifts mounted up around her in great piles, more gifts than she could possibly imagine, more gifts than she could want or use. And last of all, Khal Drogo brought forth his own bride gift to her. An unexpected hush rippled out from the center of the camp as he left her side, growing until it had swallowed the whole Khalasar. When he returned, the dense press of Dothraki gift-givers parted before him, and he led the horse to her. She was a young filly, spirited and splendid. Dani knew just enough about horses to know that this was no ordinary animal. There was something about her that took the breath away. She was grey as the winter sea, with a mane like silver smoke. Hesitantly, she reached out and stroked the horse's neck, ran her fingers through the silver of her mane. Khal Drogo said something in Dothraki, and Magister Illyroy translated. "Silver for the silver of your hair, the cow says." "She's beautiful," Dani murmured. "She is the pride of the Khalasar," Illyroy said. "Custom decrees that the Khaleesi must ride a mount worthy of her place by the side of the Khal." Drogo stepped forward and put his hands on her waist. He lifted her up as easily as if she were a child and set her on the thin Dothraki saddle, so much smaller than the one she was used to. Dani sat there uncertain for a moment. No one had told her about this part. "What should I do?" she asked Illyroy. It was Ser Jorah Mormont who answered. "Take the reins and ride. You need not go too far." Nervously, Dani gathered the reins in her hands and slid her feet into the short stirrups. She was only a fair rider. She had spent far more time traveling by ship and wagon and palanquin than by horseback. Praying that she would not fall off and disgrace herself, she gave the filly the lightest and most timid touch with her knees. And for the first time in hours, she forgot to be afraid. Or perhaps it was for the first time ever. The silver-grey filly moved with a smooth and silken gait, and the crowd parted for her, every eye upon them. Dani found herself moving faster than she had intended, yet somehow it was exciting rather than terrifying. The horse broke into a trot, and she smiled. Dothraki scrambled to clear a path. The slightest pressure with her legs, the lightest touch on the reins, and the filly responded. She went into a gallop, and now the Dothraki were hooting and laughing and shouting at her as they jumped out of her way. As she turned to ride back, a fire pit loomed ahead, directly in her path. They were hemmed in on either side, with no room to stop. A daring she had never known filled Daenerys then, and she gave her filly her head. The silver horse leapt the flames as if she had wings. When she pulled up before Magister Illyroy, she said, "Tell Khal Drogo that he has given me the wind." The fat Pentoshi stroked his yellow beard as he repeated her words in Dothraki, and Dani saw her new husband smile for the first time. The last silver of sun vanished behind the high walls of Pentos to the west just then. Dani had lost all track of time. Khal Drogo commanded his blood riders to bring forth his own horse, a lean red stallion. As the Khal was saddling the horse, Viserys slid close to Dani on her silver, dug his fingers into her leg, and said, "Please him, sweet sister, or I swear you will see the dragon wake as it has never woken before." The fear came back to her then, with her brother's words. She felt like a child once more, only 13 and all alone, not ready for what was about to happen to her. They rode out together as the stars came out, leaving the Khalasar and the grass palaces behind. Khal Drogo spoke no word to her, but drove his stallion at a hard trot through the gathering dusk. The tiny silver bells in his long braid rang softly as he rode. "I am the blood of the dragon," she whispered aloud, as she followed, trying to keep her courage up. "I am the blood of the dragon." The dragon was never afraid. Afterward, she could not say how far or how long they had ridden, but it was full dark when they stopped at a grassy palace beside a small stream. Drogo swung off his horse and lifted her down from hers. She felt as fragile as glass in his hands, her limbs as weak as water. She stood there helpless and trembling in her wedding silks while he secured the horses, and when he turned to look at her, she began to cry. Khal Drogo stared at her tears, his face strangely empty of expression. "No," he said. He lifted his hand and rubbed away the tears roughly with a callous thumb. "You speak the common tongue," Dani said in wonder. "No," he said again. Perhaps he had only that word, she thought. But it was one word more than she had known he had, and somehow it made her feel a little better. Drogo touched her hair lightly, sliding the silver blonde strands between his fingers and murmuring softly in Dothraki. Dani did not understand the words, yet there was warmth in the tone, a tenderness she had never expected from this man. He put his fingers under her chin and lifted her head, so she was looking up into his eyes. Drogo towered over her as he towered over everyone. Taking her lightly under the arms, he lifted her and seated her on a rounded rock beside the stream. Then he sat on the ground facing her, legs crossed beneath him, their faces finally at a height. "No," he said. "Is that the only word you know?" she asked him. Drogo did not reply. His long heavy braid was coiled in the dirt beside him. He pulled it over his right shoulder and began to remove the bells from his hair, one by one. After a moment, Dani leaned forward to help. When they were done, Drogo gestured. She understood. Slowly, carefully, she began to undo his braid. It took a long time. All the while, he sat there silently, watching her. When she was done, he shook his head, and his hair spread out behind him like a river of darkness, oiled and gleaming. She had never seen hair so long, so black, so thick. Then it was his turn. He began to undress her. His fingers were deft and strangely tender. He removed her silks one by one, carefully, while Dani sat unmoving, silent, looking at his eyes. When he bared her small breasts, she could not help herself. She averted her eyes and covered herself with her hands. "No," Drogo said. He pulled her hands away from her breasts, gently but firmly, then lifted her face again to make her look at him. No, he repeated. No, she echoed back at him. He stood her up and then he pulled her close to remove the last of her silks. The night air was chilly on her bare skin. She shivered and goose flesh covered her arms and legs. She was afraid of what would come next. But for a while, nothing happened. Khal Drogo sat with his legs crossed, looking at her, drinking in her body with his eyes. After a while, he began to touch her, lightly at first, then harder. She could sense the fierce strength in his hands, but he never hurt her. He held her hands in his own and brushed her fingers one by one. Dani was flushed and breathless, her heart fluttering in her chest. He cupped her face in his huge hands and looked into her eyes. No, he said, and she knew it was a question. She took his hand and moved it down to the wetness between her thighs. Yes, she whispered. And this is where Daenerys II ends. Now with this video series, we'll point out all the times that dreams seem to influence the characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, from Bran and Jon's wolf dreams to Melisandre's visions and so on. Because George dedicates an incredible amount of time to dreams, and even though it could be argued that they are only meant to be symbolic of what the characters are feeling, we know from Marwyn in Sam 5 in A Feast for Crows that the sorcerers of the Freehold could see across mountains, seas, and deserts with one of those glass candles. They could enter a man's dreams and give him visions, and speak to one another half a world away, seated before their candles. So Dany's dragon dream might just be a regular dream, but it would be interesting if Quaithe or someone else sent this dream to Daenerys so she could bring forth dragons into the world. However, it is also reported that glass candles don't start burning until the arrival of the Red Comet at the end of A Game of Thrones. So maybe glass candles do play a major role in facilitating the different conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire, but they don't start until the arrival of the Red Comet. In which case, Dany's dream is just a dream. But in the meanwhile, we'll operate under the assumption that the dreams of A Game of Thrones from Bran to Daenerys have been sent by the secret masterminds behind the events of A Song of Ice and Fire. The side of fire wants dragons, and the side of ice, well, we're not sure what they want. Here are some of the differences between the HBO TV show and book. Jorah's appearance is different. In the books, he is described as bold, stocky, hairy, and unattractive, but is strong and fit. In the series, he has short blonde hair and is leaner and far better looking if that wasn't obvious. In the book, Drogo treats Daenerys affectionately and sensitively. He gently caresses her, asking her no, and waiting patiently until she overcomes her fear, feels ready for the consummation, and tells him yes. In the show, Drogo does not wait for Daenerys to consent to sex, and unlike the book, Daenerys does not seem to take pleasure in it, crying while he takes her from behind. That's it for this chapter. Bran II. The hunt left at dawn. The king wanted wild boar at the feast tonight. Prince Joffrey rode with his father, so Robb had been allowed to join the hunters as well. Uncle Benjen, Jory, Theon Greyjoy, Sir Roderick, and even the Queen's funny little brother had all ridden out with them. It was the last hunt after all. On the morrow, they left for the south. Bran had been left behind with Jon and the girls and Rickon. But Rickon was only a baby, and the girls were only girls, and Jon and his wolf were nowhere to be found. Bran did not look for him very hard. He thought Jon was angry at him. Jon seemed to be angry at everyone these days. Bran did not know why. He was going with Uncle Benjen to the Wall to join the Night's Watch. That was almost as good as going south with the king. Robb was the one they were leaving behind, not Jon. For days Bran could scarcely wait to be off. He was going to ride the King's Road on a horse of his own, not a pony, but a real horse. His father would be the hand of the king, and they were going to live in the Red Castle at King's Landing, the castle the Dragon Lords had built. Old Nan said there were ghosts there, and dungeons where terrible things had been done, and dragon heads on the walls. It gave Bran a shiver just to think of it. but he was not afraid. How could he be afraid? His father would be with him, and the king with all the knights and sworn swords. Bran was going to be a knight himself one day, one of the King's Guard. Old Nan said they were the finest swords in all the realm. There were only 7 of them, and they wore white armor and had no wives or children, but lived only to serve the king. Bran knew all the stories. Their names were like music to him. Surin of the Mirror Shield, Sir Ryman Redwyn, Prince Aemon the Dragon Knight, the twins Sir Eric and Sir Arik, who had died on one another's swords hundreds of years ago, when brother fought sister in the war the singers called the Dance of the Dragons. The White Bull, Gerald Hightower, Sir Arthur Dane, the Sword of the Morning, Barristan the Bold. 2 of the Kingsguard had come north with King Robert. Bran had watched them with fascination, never quite daring to speak to them. Sir Boris was a bold man with a jowly face, and Sir Mern had droopy eyes and a beard the colour of rust. Sir Jaime Lannister looked more like the knights in the stories, and he was of the Kingsguard too, but Robb said he had killed the old Mad King and shouldn't count anymore. The greatest living knight was Sir Barristan Selmy, Barristan the Bold, the Lord Commander of the Kingsguard. Father had promised that they would meet Sir Barristan when they reached King's Landing, and Bran had been marking the days on his wall, eager to depart to see a world he had only dreamed of and begin a life he could scarcely imagine. Yet, now that the last days was at hand, suddenly Bran felt lost. Winterfell had been the only home he had ever known. His father had told him that he ought to say his farewells today, and he had tried. After the hunt had ridden out, he wandered through the castle with his wolf at his side, intending to visit the ones who would be left behind. Old Nan and Gage the cook, Mikken in his smithy, Hodor the stable boy who smiled so much and took care of his pony and never said anything but Hodor, the man in the glass gardens who gave him a blackberry when he came to visit. But it was no good. He had gone to the stable first and seen his pony there in its stall, except it wasn't his pony anymore. He was getting a real horse and leaving the pony behind. And all of a sudden, Bran just wanted to sit down and cry. He turned and ran off before Hodor and the other stable boys could see the tears in his eyes. That was the end of his farewells. Instead, Bran spent the morning alone in the Godswood, trying to teach his wolf to fetch a stick, and failing. The wolfling was smarter than any of the hounds in his father's kennel, and Bran would have sworn he understood every word that was said to him, but he showed very little interest in chasing sticks. He was still trying to decide on a name. Robb was calling his Grey Wind because he ran so fast. Sansa had named hers Lady, and Arya named her after some old witch in the songs. And Little Rickon called his Shaggy Dog, which Bran thought was a pretty stupid name for a direwolf. Jon's wolf, the white one, was Ghost. Bran wished he had thought of that first, even though his wolf wasn't white. He tried 100 names in the last fortnight, but none of them sounded right. Finally, he got tired of the stick game and decided to go climbing. He hadn't been up to the broken tower for weeks with everything that had happened, and this might be his last chance. He raced across the Godswood, taking the long way around to avoid the pool where the heart tree grew. The heart tree had always frightened him. Trees ought not have eyes, Bran thought, or leaves that looked like hands. His wolf came sprinting at his heels. "You stay here," he told him at the base of the sentinel tree near the armory wall. "Lie down. That's right. Now stay." The wolf did as he was told. Bran scratched him behind the ears, then turned away, jumped, grabbed a low branch, and pulled himself up. He was halfway up the tree, moving easily from limb to limb, when the wolf got to his feet and began to howl. Bran looked back down. His wolf fell silent, staring up at him through slitted yellow eyes. A strange chill went through him. He began to climb again. Once more, the wolf howled. "Quiet!" he yelled. "Sit down. Stay. You're worse than mother." The howling chased him all the way up the tree, until finally he jumped off the armory roof and out of sight. The rooftops of Winterfell were Bran's second home. His mother often said that Bran could climb before he could walk. Bran could not remember when he first learned to walk, but he could not remember when he first started to climb either, so he supposed it must be true. To a boy, Winterfell was a grey stone labyrinth of walls and towers, and courtyards and tunnels spreading out in all directions. In the older parts of the castle, the halls slanted up and down so that you couldn't even be sure what floor you were on. The place had grown over the centuries like some monstrous stone tree. Maester Luwin told him once, and its branches were gnarled and thick and twisted, its roots sunk deep into the earth. When he got out from under it and scrambled up near the sky, Bran could see all of Winterfell in a glance. He liked the way it looked, spread out beneath him, only birds wheeling over his head, while all of the life of the castle went on below. Bran could perch for hours among the shapeless rainworm gargoyles that brooded over the first keep, watching it all, the men drilling with the wood and steel in the yard, the cooks tending their vegetables in the glass garden, restless dogs running back and forth in the kennels, the silence of the godswood, the girls gossiping beside the washing well. It made him feel like he was lord of the castle, in a way even Robb would never know. It taught him Winterfell's secrets too. The builders had not even leveled the earth. There were hills and valleys behind the walls of Winterfell. There was a covered bridge that went from the 4th floor of the bell tower across to the 2nd floor of the rookery. Bran knew about that, and he knew you could get inside the inner wall by the south gate, climb 3 floors and run all the way around Winterfell through a narrow tunnel in the stone, and then come out on the ground level at the north gate, with 100 feet of wall looming over you. Even Maester Luwin didn't know that. Bran was convinced. His mother was terrified that one day Bran would slip off a wall and kill himself. He told her that he wouldn't, but she never believed him. Once, she made him promise that he would stay on the ground. He had managed to keep the promise for almost a fortnight, miserable every day, until one night he had gone out the window of his bedroom when his brothers were fast asleep. He confessed his crime the next day in a fit of guilt. Lord Eddard offered him to the godswood to cleanse himself. Guards were posted to see that Bran remained there alone all night to reflect on his disobedience. The next morning, Bran was nowhere to be seen. They finally found him fast asleep in the upper branches of the tallest sentinel in the grove. As angry as he was, his father could not help but laugh. "You're not my son," he told Bran when they fetched him down. "You're a squirrel. So be it. If you must climb, then climb. But try not to let your mother see you." Bran did his best, although he did not think he ever really fooled her. Since his father would not forbid it, she turned to others. Old Nan told him a story about a bad little boy who climbed too high and was struck down by lightning, and how afterward the crows came to peck out his eyes. Bran was not impressed. There were crows' nests atop the broken tower, where no one ever went but him, and sometimes he filled his pocket with corn before he climbed up there, and the crows ate it right out of his hand. None of them had ever shown the slightest bit of interest in pecking out his eyes. Later, Maester Luwin built a little pottery boy and dressed him in Bran's clothes and flung him off the wall into the yard below to demonstrate what would happen to Bran if he fell. That had been fun, but afterward, Bran just looked at the Maester and said, "I'm not made of clay. And anyhow, I never fall." Then for a while, the guards would chase him whenever they saw him on the roofs and try to haul him down. That was the best time of all. It was like playing a game with his brothers, except that Bran always won. None of the guards could climb half so well as Bran, not even Jory. Most of the time, they never saw him anyway. People never looked up. That was another thing he liked about climbing. It was almost like being invisible. He liked how it felt too, pulling himself up a wall stone by stone, fingers and toes digging hard into the small crevices between. He always took off his boots and went barefoot when he climbed. It made him feel as if he had 4 hands instead of 2. He liked the deep, sweet ache it left in the muscles afterwards. He liked the way the air tasted way up high, sweet and cold as a winter peach. He liked the birds, the crows in the broken tower, the tiny little sparrows that nestled in cracks between the stones, the ancient owl that slept in the dusty loft above the old armory. Bran knew them all. Most of all, he liked going places that no one else could go, and seeing the grey sprawl of Winterfell in a way that no one else ever saw it. It made the whole castle Bran's secret place. His favourite haunt was the broken tower. Once it had been a watchtower, the tallest in Winterfell. A long time ago, 100 years before even his father had been born, a lightning strike had set it afire. The top third of the structure had collapsed inward, and the tower had never been rebuilt. Sometimes his father sent ratters into the base of the tower to clean out the nest they always found among the jumble of fallen stones and charred and rotten beams. But no one ever got up to the jagged top of the structure now, except for Bran and the crows. He knew 2 ways to get there. You could climb straight up the side of the tower itself, but the stones were loose, the mortar that held them together long gone to ash, and Bran never liked to put his full weight on them. The best way was to start from the Godswood, shimmy up the tall sentinel, and cross over the armory and the guards' hall, leaping roof to roof, barefoot so the guards wouldn't hear you overhead. That brought you up to the blind side of the first keep, the oldest part of the castle. A squat round fortress that was taller than it looked. Only rats and spiders live there now, but the old stone still made for good climbing. You could go straight up to where the gargoyles leaned out blindly over empty space and swung from gargoyle to gargoyle, hand over hand, around to the north side. From there, if you really stretched, you could reach out and pull yourself over to the broken tower where it leaned close. The last part was the scramble up the blackened stones to the eyrie, no more than 10 feet, and then the crows would come around to see if you brought any corn. Bran was moving from gargoyle to gargoyle with the ease of long practice when he heard the voices. He was so startled he almost lost his grip. The first keep had been empty all his life. "I do not like it," a woman was saying. There was a row of windows beneath him, and the voice was drifting out of the last window on this side. "You should be the hand." "Gods forbid," a man's voice replied lazily. "It's not an honor I'd want. There's far too much work involved." Bran hung, listening, suddenly afraid to go on. They might glimpse his feet if he tried to swing by. "Don't you see the danger this puts us in?" the woman said. "Robert loves the man like a brother." "Robert can barely stomach his brothers. Not that I blame him. Stannis would be enough to give anyone indigestion." "Don't play the fool. Stannis and Renly are one thing, and Eddard Stark is quite another. Robert will listen to Stark. Damn them both. I should have insisted that he name you, but I was certain Stark would refuse him." "We ought to count ourselves fortunate," the man said. "The king might as easily have named one of his brothers, or even Littlefinger, gods help us. Give me honorable enemies rather than ambitious ones, and I'll sleep more easily by night." They were talking about father, Bran realized. He wanted to hear more, a few more feet, but they would see him if he swung out in front of the window. "We will have to watch him carefully," the woman said. "I would sooner watch you," the man said. He sounded bored. "Come back here." "Lord Eddard has never taken any interest in anything that happens south of the neck," the woman said. "Never, I tell you. He means to move against us. Why else would he leave the seat of his power?" 100 reasons. Duty, honor. He yearns to write his name large across the book of history. To get away from his wife, or both. Perhaps he just wants to be warm for once in his life. His wife is Lady Arryn's sister. It's a wonder Lysa was not here to greet us with her accusations. Bran looked down. There was a narrow ledge beneath the window, only a few inches wide. He tried to lower himself toward it. Too far. He would never reach. "You fret too much. Lysa Arryn is a frightened cow." That frightened cow shared Jon Arryn's bed. If she knew anything, she would have gone to Robert before she fled King's Landing. When he had already agreed to foster that weakling son of hers at Castle Rock, I think not. She knew the boy's life would be hostage to her silence. She may grow bolder now that he's safe atop the Eyrie. Mothers. The man made the word sound like a curse. I think birthing does something to your minds. You are all mad. He laughed. It was a bitter sound. Let Lady Arryn grow as bold as she likes. Whatever she knows, whatever she thinks she knows, she has no proof. He paused for a moment. Or does she? Do you think the king will require proof? The woman said. I tell you, he loves me not. And whose fault is that, sweet sister? Bran studied the ledge. He could drop down. It was too narrow to land on, but he could catch hold as he fell past, pull himself up, except that might make a noise, draw them to the window. He was not sure what he was hearing, but he knew it was not meant for his ears. If you mean I see the same thing, yes, the man said. I see a man who would sooner die than betray his king. He betrayed one already, or have you forgotten? The woman said. Oh, I don't deny he's loyal to Robert. That's obvious. What happens when Robert dies and Joff takes the throne? And the sooner that comes to pass, the safer we'll all be. My husband grows more restless every day. Having Stark beside him will only make him worse. He's still in love with the sister, the inspid little dead 16-year-old. How long till he decides to put me aside for some new Lyanna? Bran was suddenly very frightened. He wanted nothing so much as to go back the way he had come, to find his brothers. Only, what would he tell them? He had to get closer, Bran realized. He had to see who was talking. The man sighed. You should think less about the future and more about the pleasures at hand. Stop that, the woman said. Bran heard the sudden slap of flesh on flesh, then the man's laughter. Bran pulled himself up, climbed over the gargoyle, crawled out onto the roof. This was the easy way. He moved across the roof to the next gargoyle, right above the window of the room where they were talking. All this talk is getting very tiresome, sister, the man said. Come here and be quiet. Bran sat astride the gargoyle, tightened his legs around it, and swung himself around upside down. He hung by his legs and slowly stretched his head down toward the window. The world looked strange upside down. A courtyard swam dizzily below him, its stones still wet with melted snow. Bran looked in the window. Inside the room, a man and woman were wrestling. They were both naked. Bran could not tell who they were. The man's back was to him, and his body screened the woman from view as he pushed her up against a wall. There were soft, wet sounds. Bran realized they were kissing. He watched wide-eyed and frightened, his breath tight in his throat. The man had a hand down between her legs, and he must have been hurting her there because the woman started to moan, low in her throat. Stop it, she said. Stop it. Oh, please. But her voice was low and weak, and she did not push him away. Her hands buried themselves in his hair, his tangled golden hair, and pulled his face down to her breast. Bran saw her face. Her eyes were closed and her mouth was open, moaning. Her golden hair swung from side to side as her head moved back and forth, but still he recognized the queen. He must have made a noise. Suddenly, her eyes opened, and she was staring right at him. She screamed. Everything happened at once then. The woman pushed the man away, wildly, shouting and pointing. Bran tried to pull himself up, bending double as he reached for the gargoyle. He was in too much of a hurry. His hands scraped uselessly across smooth stone. And in his panic, his legs slipped, and suddenly he was falling. There was an instant of vertigo, a sickening lurch as the window flashed past. He shot out a hand, grabbed for the ledge, lost it, caught it again with his other hand. He swung against the building hard. The impact took the breath out of him. Bran dangled one-handed, panting. Faces appeared in the window above him. The queen, and now Bran recognized the man beside her. They looked as much alike as the reflection in a mirror. He saw us, the woman said shrilly. So he did, the man said. Bran's fingers started to slip. He grabbed the ledge with his other hand. Fingernails dug into unyielding stone. The man reached down. "Take my hand," he said, "before you fall." Bran seized his arm and held on tight with all his strength. The man yanked him to the ledge. "What are you doing?" the woman demanded. The man ignored her. He was very strong. He stood Bran up on the sill. "How old are you, boy?" "7, Bran said, shaking with relief. His fingers had dug deep gouges in the man's forearm. He let go sheepishly. The man looked over at the woman. "The things I do for love," he said with loathing. He gave Bran a shove. Screaming, Bran went backward out the window into empty air. There was nothing to grab onto. The courtyard rushed up to meet him. Somewhere off in the distance, a wolf was howling. Crows circled the broken tower, waiting for corn. And this is where Bran II ends. An interesting thought is that we learn in A Dance with Dragons that Cold Hands and Bloodraven control ravens, but not crows. However, Bran thinks he is the three-eyed crow because all his dreams involve crows. "Are you the three-eyed crow?" Bran heard himself say. Crow? The Pale Lord's voice was dry. We'll be returning to this idea a lot, since Bran seems to have 3 different kinds of dreams. The wolf dreams, the tree dreams, and the three-eyed crow dreams. As we go along with this video series, we'll be pointing out that the three-eyed crow, the last green seer, might not be Bloodraven, and maybe it was not Bloodraven who sent the direwolves in Bran I, since he has only been shown to see through werewoods and walk into ravens. Maybe the three-eyed crow is an even more powerful green seer. We propose that the three-eyed crow is the most powerful green seer ever to live and was responsible for Bran's fall, the last green seer. But in Bran's dreams, he was a three-eyed crow. Now, onto the differences between the book and show. In the book, Bran finds Cersei and Jaime both naked. In the show, they are both dressed. The reason is that Lena Headey was pregnant during filming of the scene, and they used a double. In the book, Cersei and Jaime talk about the previous events that transpired with the former hand, Jon Arryn. This discussion takes place in the scene showing Jon Arryn's corpse at the beginning of the episode. In the book, Jaime pushes Bran from the window with his right hand, which is poetic since Jaime ends up having his right hand cut off by Vargo Hoat, the leader of the Brave Companions in A Storm of Swords. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, but before you go, our book The Queen Games is coming soon. Pre-orders are open right now, and they directly support the future of the series. We've also dropped a cinematic trailer. The link is below if you want to first look at the world, the cultures, and the queens who fight to rule. And this part is important. You decide what happens next. There's a voting page linked below where you can influence the direction of all future books, alliances, betrayals, and all major decisions. Check out the links in the description, and remember to subscribe for more.